The morning mist clings to the jungle canopy like ancient breath, thick and heavy with secrets that span millennia. Somewhere beneath the tangled roots of cecropia trees and the watchful eyes of howler monkeys, colossal stone faces emerge from the earth. These are not mere sculptures, they are sentinels, guardians of a mystery that archaeologists have been trying to unravel for over a century. Picture yourself standing before one of these monolithic heads in the humid dawn of southern Mexico. The stone, carved from basalt quarried dozens of miles away, weighs 40 tons. Its features are both familiar and alien: full lips, broad nose, eyes that seem to hold the weight of centuries. The craftsmanship is flawless, yet it predates the Roman Empire by nearly 1,000 years. The jungle whispers around you, but the stone remains silent. Who carved this face? What king or god or ancestor does it represent? And perhaps most mysteriously of all, why do some of these features seem to echo across oceans, in lands the ancient Americans supposedly never knew? These are the monuments of the Olmecs, a civilization so advanced and so enigmatic that mainstream archaeology calls them the mother culture of Mesoamerica. But what if that title understates their true significance? What if these mysterious people, thriving along the Gulf Coast between 1200 and 400 BCE, were something far more extraordinary than regional pioneers? Deep in the steaming lowlands, where the Coatzacoalcos River winds toward the sea, layers of earth have preserved not just stone heads, but entire cities. Platforms rise from the jungle floor like sleeping pyramids. Jade artifacts gleam with impossible precision. Rubber balls lie buried in ancient courts where games were played according to rules we can barely comprehend. The conventional narrative tells us the Olmecs were the first complex civilization in the Americas. Impressive, certainly, but geographically contained. They developed writing, astronomy, and monumental architecture in isolation, their influence spreading gradually to later cultures like the Maya and Aztec. It's a neat, orderly story that fits comfortably within established archaeological frameworks. But what if that story is incomplete? What if the colossal heads and mysterious artifacts scattered across these jungle sites are not the beginning of American civilization, but echoes of something much older and far more connected? What if the Olmecs possessed knowledge that reached across oceans, linking continents in ways that would revolutionize our understanding of human history? Standing in the shadow of these stone giants, with humidity pressing against your skin and the sounds of an ancient ecosystem all around, you could almost feel the weight of unanswered questions. The jungle keeps its secrets well, but occasionally, through the patient work of archaeologists and the keen eye of researchers willing to challenge conventional wisdom, those secrets begin to whisper their truths. The morning light filters through the canopy, illuminating carved features that have gazed into countless dawns and dusks. These faces have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the coming of Spanish conquistadors, the birth of modern nations. They have remained constant while the world around them transformed beyond recognition. But perhaps their greatest secret is not what they witnessed, but what they remember: memories, carved in stone of a time when the world was more connected than we dare imagine. A time when the Olmecs might not have been merely the first civilization of Mesoamerica, but the inheritors and perhaps the architects of humanity's first truly global culture. The stoneheads continue their eternal vigil, their eyes fixed on horizons that stretch far beyond the jungle canopy. They wait, patient as only stone can be patient, for the day when their full story might finally be told. Until then, the jungle whispers, and the mystery deepens with each passing dawn. As the jungle surrenders its secrets one careful excavation at a time, mainstream archaeology has painted a portrait of the Olmecs that reads like the opening chapter of American civilization. According to established scholarship, these remarkable people emerged from the humid lowlands of Mexico around 1200 BCE, materializing almost fully formed in the archaeological record, like actors taking the stage for the first act of a very long play. The orthodox timeline places the Olmecs at the dawn of Mesoamerican complexity. Before them, the region knew only scattered villages of farmers growing maize and beans in forest clearings. After them, the sophisticated urban centers of Teotihuacan, the astronomical precision of the Maya, and the imperial grandeur of the Aztecs. The Olmecs occupy that crucial threshold moment when human society transforms from simple to complex, from village to city, from local to regional power. Their heartland stretched along the Gulf Coast, from the Tuxtla Mountains to the wetlands where rivers drain into the sea. Here, in an environment that modern visitors find oppressively humid and challenging, the Olmecs built their first monumental centers. San Lorenzo, rising from the landscape around 1150 BCE, represents one of humanity's earliest experiments in urban planning. La Venta followed, then Tres Zapotes, each site revealing new layers of sophistication that seemed to emerge from nowhere, as if the Olmecs had skipped several centuries of gradual development. Archaeologists describe them as the mother culture of Mesoamerica, and the evidence supports this designation. They developed the first writing system in the Americas, created the calendar that would later be refined by the Maya, and established the ritual ball game that became central to every subsequent Mesoamerican civilization. Their artistic innovations, from jade carving to monumental sculpture, set standards that influenced cultures for millennia. The academic consensus presents their society as hierarchical and complex. Elite rulers commanded the labor necessary to move 40-ton stones across difficult terrain. Skilled artisans created works of art that demonstrate mastery over materials and techniques. Traders established networks that brought obsidian from volcanic highlands, jade from distant mountains, and exotic goods from regions hundreds of miles away. Their religious system centered on the jaguar, a powerful predator that inhabited their jungle world. Olmec art depicts human jaguar hybrids, beings that seem to bridge the gap between earthly power and divine authority. These were jaguars, as archaeologists call them, appear in countless sculptures and carvings, their snarling faces suggesting supernatural transformation and otherworldly knowledge. The mainstream narrative explains Olmec achievements through internal development and regional exchange. They learned to work jade through experimentation. They moved massive stones through ingenuity and organization. They developed astronomical knowledge through careful observation of their own skies. Their art reflects their immediate environment: jaguars from local jungles, serpents from nearby rivers, plants and animals from their tropical homeland. This is the baseline story, and it's impressive enough to secure the Olmecs' place as pioneers of American civilization. They built the first pyramids in the New World, created the first complex society, and established cultural patterns that would echo through thousands of years of Mesoamerican history. By any measure, they represent a remarkable achievement of human organization and creativity. Yet even within this orthodox framework, puzzles remain. Their sudden appearance in the archaeological record suggests either rapid development or incomplete preservation of earlier stages. Their technical achievements seem remarkably advanced for their time period. Their artistic sophistication implies cultural influences that extend beyond their immediate geographical boundaries. The established timeline creates a neat progression from Olmec innovation to Maya elaboration to Aztec empire, but it also raises questions about the sources of that initial innovation. Where did the Olmecs acquire their knowledge? How did they develop such sophisticated techniques so quickly? And why do their artistic traditions sometimes seem to echo styles and symbols from regions far beyond their supposed sphere of influence? These questions hover at the edges of mainstream archaeology like persistent shadows. The orthodox narrative provides a framework for understanding Olmec civilization, but it doesn't fully explain the mystery of their remarkable achievements. As excavations continue and new discoveries emerge from jungle sites, the baseline story grows more complex, revealing hints of influences and connections that extend the Olmec story beyond the comfortable boundaries of regional development. The morning mist still clings to the ruins of San Lorenzo, but the light is beginning to reveal details that don't quite fit the established pattern. 17 colossal heads have been discovered across Olmecs sites, each one a masterpiece of ancient sculpture that defies simple explanation. Carved from basalt quarried at Cerro Sinpec, some 60 miles from where they now rest, these monuments represent an engineering feat that challenges our assumptions about pre-Columbian capabilities. The largest weighs over 40 tons heavier than most modern transport vehicles. It somehow traveled across swampland and jungle to reach its final destination. Standing before Colossal Head 1 at La Venta, discovered in 1862, and the first to announce the Olmec presence to the modern world, you encounter a face that seems both ancient and timeless. The features are distinctly human, yet larger-than-life full lips, broad nose, almond-shaped eyes beneath what appears to be a close-fitting helmet or headdress. The expression is neither stern nor benevolent, but rather contemplative, as if the subject were pondering some cosmic mystery beyond human comprehension. Each head displays unique characteristics. Some wear elaborate headdresses decorated with geometric patterns that might represent feathers, jaguar pelts, or entirely symbolic designs. Others sport ear ornaments that dangle with sculptural precision. The faces themselves vary dramatically. Some appear youthful, others mature, a few bearing expressions that could be interpreted as everything from divine authority to quiet wisdom. Mainstream archaeology interprets them as portraits of individual rulers, each head commemorating a specific leader of Olmec society. But the features themselves have sparked decades of debate that extends far beyond academic circles. The facial characteristics don't conform to typical Mesoamerican phenotypes. Instead, they display what some researchers describe as African features: full lips, broad noses, and facial structures that seem more at home along the Niger River than the Coatzacoalcos. Others point to possible Asian influences, noting eye shapes and facial proportions that suggest contact with populations from across the Pacific. The conventional explanation dismisses these observations as coincidental variations within the normal range of human features. Ancient peoples, archaeologists argue, displayed the same diversity of appearance that we see today. The Olmec sculptors simply carved what they saw around them, the natural variation in human faces that exists in any population. The apparent foreign features are accidents of perception, patterns that modern observers read into ancient art. Yet the consistency of these features, across multiple heads, carved by different artists over several centuries, suggests something more deliberate than random variation. Head after head displays the same distinctive characteristics: the broad noses, full lips, and particular eye shapes that have prompted alternative theories about Olmec origins and connections. Some researchers have proposed that these heads document actual contact between Olmec civilization and visitors from across the oceans. The African features, in this interpretation, represent memories of transatlantic voyagers who reached the Americas millennia before Columbus. The Asian characteristics might record trans-Pacific contact, evidence of ancient maritime connections that linked Mesoamerica with distant shores. Dr. Ivan van Sertima, in his controversial work, They Came Before Columbus, argued that the heads provide sculptural evidence of African presence in pre-Columbian America. He pointed to similarities between Olmec art and Nubian sculpture, noting comparable techniques and stylistic approaches that suggest shared cultural traditions. While mainstream archaeology remains skeptical of such claims, the debate continues to generate scholarly discussion and popular fascination. The helmets or headdresses that crown many of the heads add another layer of mystery. These aren't simple caps or ceremonial crowns, but complex designs that some researchers interpret as protective gear. The pattern of straps and padding, visible on several heads, resembles modern football helmets more than traditional Mesoamerican regalia. Could these represent actual protective equipment worn by Olmec leaders? Or do they symbolize something else entirely: divine authority, astronomical knowledge, or technological capabilities lost to time? The technical achievement of creating these monuments raises questions that extend beyond artistic interpretation. Moving 40-ton blocks of stone across difficult terrain requires sophisticated engineering knowledge. The sculptors who carved these faces worked with tools of stone and wood, yet achieved precision that rivals modern craftsmanship. The basalt they used is among the hardest stones available, requiring patience and skill that speak to generations of accumulated knowledge. Each head was carved from a single block of stone, with no evidence of patches or repairs. The sculptors knew exactly how their finished work would appear before they began, suggesting either remarkable planning ability or access to detailed models. The uniformity of technique across different sites implies shared training and standardized methods that speak to a highly organized artistic tradition. The positioning of the heads within Olmec sites suggests they served specific ceremonial or administrative functions. Some guard the entrances to pyramid complexes. Others occupy central plazas where they would have been visible to large gatherings. Their placement implies that these weren't merely artistic achievements, but functional elements of Olmec political and religious systems. As afternoon light plays across the carved basalt features, the heads maintain their enigmatic silence. They continue to guard whatever secrets the Olmecs embedded in stone, their eyes gazing into distances that stretch far beyond the jungle canopy. Whether they represent local rulers, foreign visitors, or something else entirely, they stand as testimony to a civilization capable of achievements that still challenge our understanding of ancient American capabilities. The artistic legacy of the Olmecs extends far beyond their monumental heads into a realm of sculptural innovation that continues to puzzle researchers and ignite passionate academic debates. In museums and private collections around the world, Olmec artifacts display a sophistication and strange beauty that seems to transcend their supposed geographical and temporal boundaries. These smaller works, jade figurines, ceramic vessels, stone masks, reveal artistic traditions that challenge conventional understanding of pre-Columbian isolation. Consider the jade figurines discovered at La Venta and other Olmec sites. Carved with microscopic precision from one of the world's hardest stones, these miniature sculptures depict beings that hover between human and divine, natural and supernatural. The most famous among them shows a figure with an infant's body and an adult's face, its features bearing the distinctive characteristics that have become synonymous with Olmec art: the downturned mouth, almond-shaped eyes, and flattened nose that some interpret as jaguar-like, others as distinctly human variations. The technical mastery required to create these jade works staggers modern observers. Working without metal tools, Olmec artisans somehow achieve levels of detail that contemporary jewelers struggle to match using power equipment. The surfaces are polished to mirror perfection. The proportions are mathematically precise. The artistic vision that guided their creation suggests cultural influences that extend far beyond the immediate Mesoamerican world. Mainstream archaeology explains these achievements through patient experimentation and accumulated knowledge. The Olmecs developed their jade working techniques over generations, passing skills from master to apprentice in an unbroken chain of artistic tradition. The strange beauty of their creations reflects their unique aesthetic vision, influenced by the natural world of jaguars, serpents, and tropical abundance that surrounded them. But alternative researchers point to troubling similarities between Olmec art and artistic traditions from across the oceans. The jade working techniques display parallels with Chinese methods dating to the same period. The stylistic approaches to depicting human-divine hybrids echo African sculptural traditions. The mathematical precision of proportions suggests knowledge of geometric principles that emerged independently in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Perhaps most intriguing are the Olmec depictions of beings that seem to wear helmets, diving gear, or breathing apparatus. Stone sculptures from Monte Alto and other sites show figures with elaborate headgear that covers their faces, leaving only eyes visible through what appear to be viewing ports. The level of detail in these carvings suggests the artists worked from actual models. But what were they modeling? The conventional interpretation views these as ceremonial masks or religious regalia, symbolic representations of supernatural transformation or divine authority. The helmets are stylized jaguar heads. The apparent breathing apparatus represents symbolic breath or spiritual power. The viewing ports are artistic conventions, not literal depictions of functional equipment. Yet the consistency of these elements across multiple sites and time periods suggests something more than symbolic representation. The helmets show mechanical detail straps, joints, and structural elements that seem more functional than decorative. The viewing ports are positioned exactly where they would need to be for actual vision. The breathing apparatus displays ventilation patterns that make sense from an engineering perspective. Other Olmec artifacts display equally puzzling characteristics. Ceramic vessels show figures engaged in activities that don't correspond to known Mesoamerican practices. Some appear to be performing surgical procedures with precision instruments. Others seem to be manipulating objects that resemble modern technological devices. A few depict scenes that could be interpreted as space travel, underwater exploration, or other activities that official archaeology considers impossible for pre-Columbian peoples. The rubber technology that gave the Olmecs their name, Olmecatl, means rubber people, in Nahuatl represents another mysterious achievement. They developed methods for processing latex from rubber trees into elastic, waterproof materials centuries before similar techniques appeared elsewhere in the world. Their rubber balls weren't simple toys, but sophisticated sporting equipment designed for games that required precise bounce characteristics and durability. The Olmec writing system, preserved in fragments on monuments and portable objects, displays characteristics that some researchers find troublingly familiar. The glyphs combine pictographic and phonetic elements in ways that parallel early Chinese, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian scripts. While mainstream scholarship attributes these similarities to the universal logic of written communication, alternative theories suggest actual historical connections between these distant writing traditions. Astronomical alignments in Olmec art provide another source of debate. Many sculptures and architectural elements incorporate mathematical relationships that correspond to celestial cycles, not just obvious patterns like solar years, but complex calculations involving planetary movements and stellar positions. The level of astronomical knowledge required for these alignments suggests either centuries of careful observation or access to knowledge developed elsewhere and transmitted across vast distances. The artistic evidence accumulates like pieces of a vast puzzle that refuses to resolve into a single, coherent picture. Each artifact raises new questions about Olmec capabilities, connections, and origins. The mainstream narrative of gradual development and regional isolation grows less convincing as more sophisticated works emerge from jungle excavations. In the climate-controlled galleries where these artifacts now rest, protected from the humid environment that preserved them for millennia, they continue to challenge our assumptions about ancient American civilization. The jade figurines gaze out with expressions that seem to hold secrets. The mysterious helmeted figures maintain their enigmatic silence. The complex astronomical alignments point toward knowledge that may have originated far beyond the Olmec heartland. The traces of the unknown multiply with each new discovery, suggesting that the Olmec story extends far beyond the comfortable boundaries of regional development into realms of human achievement that mainstream archaeology is only beginning to acknowledge. In the sweltering humidity of the Olmec heartland, where rainfall creates rivers and rivers create the lifeblood of civilization, an extraordinary innovation was taking shape that would remain unique in the ancient world for over 1,000 years. The Olmecs had discovered something that Europeans would master until the 1800s, the secret of processing natural rubber into durable, elastic materials that could withstand the extremes of their tropical environment. The rubber trees that grew wild in their jungle homeland produced a milky latex that most ancient peoples found interesting but ultimately useless. The sap dried into brittle chunks that cracked in heat and became rock-hard in cooler temperatures. But somehow, through methods that remain mysterious even today, the Olmecs learned to transform this unreliable material into something revolutionary. They mixed the latex with juice from morning glory vines, creating a chemical reaction that modern science recognizes as vulcanization, a process that wouldn't be discovered by Charles Goodyear until 1839. This combination produced rubber that maintained its elasticity across temperature ranges, bounced consistently, and resisted water better than any other material available to ancient peoples. The rubber balls they created weren't simple toys, but precision athletic equipment designed for the ritual ball game that became central to all subsequent Mesoamerican cultures. These balls, some weighing up to 9 pounds, had to bounce with exact predictability. Players used their hips, elbows, and shoulders to keep them aloft in courts with sloped walls that required perfect rebound angles. The stakes were often life and death, literally making the quality of the rubber crucial to more than just athletic success. Archaeological evidence suggests the Olmecs used rubber for purposes beyond ball games. They created waterproof containers, elastic bands, and even what appear to be rubber-soled sandals for walking in swampland. Some researchers speculate they may have used rubber in construction as gaskets, joint seals, or foundation materials that could flex with ground movement in their earthquake-prone region. The technology required to process rubber consistently implies systematic experimentation and accumulated knowledge. Someone had to discover that morning glory sap contained the precise chemicals needed for vulcanization. Others had to determine the correct ratios for mixing latex and vine juice. Artisans had to develop heating and molding techniques that produced uniform results. This wasn't accidental discovery, but deliberate technological development. What makes this achievement even more remarkable is its isolation in the ancient world. No other pre-Columbian civilization developed comparable rubber technology, despite having access to similar materials. The secret seems to have remained exclusively Olmec, passed down through generations of specialized craftsmen who guarded their methods carefully. The ball courts where these rubber spheres bounced and flew reveal another layer of sophistication. Olmec courts display acoustic properties that suggest advanced understanding of sound engineering. A whisper at one end could be heard clearly at the other. The sloped walls created specific resonance patterns that amplified certain frequencies while dampening others. Players and spectators experienced the game through both sight and precisely engineered sound. The cultural significance of rubber technology extended far beyond practical applications into realms of mythology and cosmology. The bouncing ball represented the sun's journey across the sky, its movement between earth and heavens, its cycle of death and rebirth. The elasticity of rubber symbolized the flexible boundary between natural and supernatural worlds, the ability of matter to transform while maintaining its essential properties. Later Mesoamerican cultures inherited the ball game, but gradually lost the sophisticated rubber-making knowledge. Maya and Aztec balls were adequate for play, but lacked the precision engineering of Olmec equipment. The original technology became legend, then myth, and memory preserved only in the archaeological record of balls that still bounce after 2 millennia. Modern attempts to recreate Olmec rubber using their presumed methods have met with mixed success. Scientists can produce similar results with morning glory sap and latex, but achieving the consistency and quality evident in archaeological specimens requires trial and error that suggests the original process was more complex than current understanding allows. The rubber technology stands as a perfect example of Olmec innovation that preceded similar achievements in other parts of the world by centuries or millennia. It demonstrates their capacity for systematic technological development, Their sophisticated understanding of natural chemistry, and their ability to create specialized knowledge that remained unique to their culture. As the afternoon rain drummed on the rubber tree leaves in the jungle around La Venta, Olmec craftsmen were perfecting techniques that wouldn't be matched elsewhere for over 1,000 years. Their rubber balls bounced through courts designed with acoustic precision, carrying cultural meaning that connected earthly games with cosmic cycles, while demonstrating technological mastery that continues to impress modern materials scientists. The secret of rubber processing represents just one thread in the complex tapestry of Olmec achievements, but it illustrates their capacity for innovation that transcended their supposed geographical and temporal limitations. Beneath the dense canopy where howler monkeys announce each dawn and cecropia trees stretch toward filtered sunlight, the jungle of southern Mexico conceals urban achievements that challenge every assumption about ancient American capabilities. The Olmec cities, buried under centuries of accumulated earth and vegetation, represent some of humanity's earliest experiments in large-scale urban planning. Their sophisticated layouts emerging from excavation like blueprints of a civilization far more advanced than its timeline should allow. San Lorenzo, the first great Olmec center, rises from the landscape like a sleeping giant, slowly awakening to archaeological investigation. What appeared to early explorers as natural hills covered in jungle growth has revealed itself to be an artificial plateau, carefully engineered to support a complex urban environment. The entire site represents a massive earth-moving project that reshaped the natural topography to create platforms, plazas, and drainage systems that functioned efficiently for over 3 centuries. The engineering sophistication of San Lorenzo becomes apparent in its hydraulic systems. Olmec engineers carved elaborate networks of stone-lined drains beneath the city, creating a water management infrastructure that controlled flooding, channeled rainfall, and maintained sanitary conditions for thousands of inhabitants. These drainage systems include features that wouldn't appear in European cities until the Roman period covered channels, settling ponds, and distribution networks that suggest advanced understanding of hydraulic principles. The artificial plateau itself represents an achievement that staggers modern observers. Using only human labor and simple tools, Olmec workers moved millions of cubic feet of earth to create a raised platform that lifted their city above the flood-prone river valley. The engineering required precise calculations of soil stability, drainage requirements, and structural integrity across a site covering several square kilometers. La Venta, rising from the swamplands near the Gulf Coast, reveals even more sophisticated urban planning. The site follows a precise north-south axis, aligned with astronomical phenomena, its layout reflecting knowledge of stellar movements and seasonal cycles. The Great Pyramid, reaching nearly 110 feet in height, demonstrates construction techniques that combine monumental ambition with engineering precision. Its fluted sides and complex internal structure suggest architectural knowledge that draws from multiple traditions. The ceremonial complexes at La Venta include features that have no parallel in contemporary Mesoamerican sites. Massive stone sarcophagi, carved from single blocks of serpentine granite, display craftsmanship that requires metal tools, yet the Olmecs supposedly worked only with stone and wood implements. The precision of joints and the smoothness of surfaces suggest manufacturing capabilities that exceed the expected limitations of Olmec technology. Underground chambers at various Olmec sites reveal architectural features that seem designed for specific functions. Acoustic chambers with precise resonance properties, astronomical observation posts with sightlines, aligned to celestial events, and storage facilities with environmental controls that preserve perishable goods for extended periods. These specialized structures suggest urban planning that went far beyond basic residential and ceremonial needs. The mysterious mosaics discovered at La Venta demonstrate artistic and engineering achievements that remain difficult to explain within conventional frameworks. These elaborate geometric patterns, created from thousands of precisely cut serpentine blocks, were buried immediately after construction, suggesting they served purposes beyond mere decoration. Some researchers interpret them as astronomical calculators, others as symbolic representations of cosmological knowledge, still others as functional devices whose purpose remains unknown. Recent archaeological investigations using ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery have revealed the true extent of Olmec urban development. What appeared to early researchers as isolated ceremonial centers now emerges as part of vast urban networks connected by raised causeways, canal systems, and cleared corridors through the jungle. The scale of these developments suggests population levels and organizational capabilities far exceeding previous estimates. The settlement patterns reveal sophisticated understanding of environmental engineering. Olmec cities were positioned to take advantage of river transport, fertile agricultural land, and natural resources, while avoiding flood zones and unstable soils. The urban layouts incorporate features designed to manage tropical climate challenges, elevated platforms for ventilation, covered walkways for protection from rain, and drainage systems that prevented waterlogging during heavy monsoons. Tres Zapotes, the latest major Olmec center, shows evidence of technological innovations that push the boundaries of expected capabilities even further. Stone monuments display carving techniques that achieve detail levels requiring metal tools and abrasive materials, not thought to be available to Olmec artisans. The site includes structures that appear to be workshops or laboratories, spaces equipped for specialized manufacturing or experimental activities whose exact nature remains mysterious. The industrial areas of Olmec cities reveal evidence of specialized production on scales that suggest trade networks extending far beyond regional boundaries. Workshops for jade carving, obsidian tool production, and ceramic manufacture show standardization and efficiency that implies systematic technological development and sophisticated quality control systems. Perhaps most mysteriously, several Olmec sites include features that serve no obvious practical purpose: geometric earthworks, buried stone arrangements, and architectural elements that seem designed according to principles unknown to mainstream archaeology. These enigmatic structures suggest knowledge systems and cultural practices that extended far beyond the basic requirements of urban civilization. As excavation continues and new technologies reveal previously hidden aspects of Olmec urban development, the picture emerges of cities that were not just administratively and ceremonially complex, but technologically sophisticated in ways that challenge fundamental assumptions about ancient American capabilities. The lost cities beneath the jungle whisper of achievements that may connect the Olmecs to knowledge traditions far older and more widespread than conventional timelines allow. The jungle maintains its patient vigil over these buried achievements, but with each passing season, more secrets emerge from the accumulated earth of centuries, revealing urban innovations that suggest the Olmec story extends far beyond the comfortable boundaries of regional development. In the humid vaults of museums and the climate-controlled archives of research institutions, fragments of Olmec knowledge hint at geographical understanding that extends far beyond their supposed sphere of influence. Stone monuments bearing cartographic symbols, jade artifacts inscribed with navigational markers, and architectural alignments that point toward distant lands suggest the Olmecs possessed maps of a world much larger than mainstream archaeology acknowledges they could have known. The most intriguing evidence appears carved into Monument 19 at La Venta, where symbols that mainstream scholars interpret as local geographical markers display troubling similarities to cartographic conventions used by ancient navigators across the globe. The arrangement of dots, lines, and geometric forms follows patterns that correspond to longitude and latitude systems, suggesting mathematical knowledge of spherical geometry that wouldn't officially appear in Mesoamerica until European contact. Dr. Cyrus Gordon, a respected linguist and ancient historian, identified inscriptions on Olmec monuments that he claimed represented Old World writing systems Phoenician, Egyptian, and even ancient Hebrew characters embedded within apparently indigenous American contexts. While his interpretations remain controversial within mainstream academia, they raise persistent questions about the sources of Olmec geographical knowledge. Consider the jade artifact known as the Kun's axe, discovered in Oaxaca but clearly of Olmec manufacture. Its surface bears incised symbols that include what appear to be coastline outlines, river systems, and navigational markers. The patterns don't correspond to known Mesoamerican geography, but they display striking similarities to ancient maps of Mediterranean and African coastal regions, preserved in Old World sources. The astronomical alignments of Olmec sites reveal knowledge of stellar positions that could only be observed from multiple latitudes. Structures at La Venta point not only toward predictable celestial events visible from their location, but also toward stellar phenomena that would be visible primarily from locations thousands of miles to the east and west. This suggests either remarkable theoretical astronomy or actual observational experience from distant geographical positions. Olmec ceramic vessels occasionally display motifs that appear to represent distant lands, mountain ranges that don't exist in Mesoamerica, desert landscapes unknown in their tropical homeland, and architectural styles that echo Old World building traditions. These images might be dismissed as artistic imagination, except for their consistent accuracy in depicting geographical and cultural features from specific regions across the Atlantic and Pacific. The trading networks documented by mainstream archaeology already stretched across remarkable distances, bringing obsidian from volcanic highlands hundreds of miles away and jade from mountain sources in modern Guatemala. But some Olmec artifacts contain materials that have no known New World sources, particular types of copper, specific varieties of stone, and organic materials that appear to originate in regions far beyond established trade routes. Recent analysis of Olmec rubber reveals chemical signatures that don't match local rubber tree varieties. The latex used in their ball manufacturing appears to combine saps from trees that grow in different hemispheres, suggesting either ancient cultivation of foreign species or trade relationships that spanned oceanic distances. Modern botanists struggle to explain how Olmecs obtained materials that shouldn't have been available in pre-Columbian America. The sophisticated understanding of ocean currents implied by some Olmec navigational symbols suggests direct experience with maritime travel across vast distances. Stone carvings depict wave patterns, wind directions, and tidal phenomena that correspond accurately to conditions in specific oceanic regions, knowledge that could only be acquired through actual voyaging, not theoretical speculation. Maps preserved in later Mesoamerican codices occasionally include references to the land of the rubber people in contexts that suggest its location relative to distant geographical features. These references place Olmec territory within larger geographical frameworks that encompass landmasses across multiple oceans, as if the Olmecs were part of a global system of geographical knowledge that connected continents. The precision of Olmec geographical alignments becomes even more remarkable when considered alongside their mathematical achievements. Calculations preserved in stone demonstrate understanding of the Earth's circumference, accurate to within a few percentage points, knowledge that wouldn't be officially rediscovered in Europe until the Hellenistic period, centuries after Olmec civilization had vanished. Some researchers have identified what appear to be Olmec symbols on ancient maps preserved in European and Asian collections, cartographic documents that predate Columbus by centuries, but include markings that correspond to Olmec geographical knowledge. While the authentication of these documents remains disputed, their existence suggests the possibility of knowledge transmission across oceanic barriers long before the age of exploration. The architectural orientations of Olmec sites, when plotted on modern maps, reveal alignments that point toward significant geographical features on distant continents, mountain peaks in Africa, river deltas in Asia, and coastal landmarks in Europe. These alignments might be coincidental, but their precision and consistency suggest intentional design based on geographical knowledge acquired through direct observation or sophisticated mathematical calculation. As scholars continue to decode the geographical implications of Olmec artifacts and architectural features, the picture emerges of a civilization whose knowledge of the world extended far beyond the comfortable boundaries of regional development. The maps of the forgotten world, encoded in stone and jade, whisper of connections that span oceans and suggest the Olmecs participated in networks of knowledge and exploration that mainstream archaeology is only beginning to acknowledge. The fragments of geographical understanding preserved in Olmec sites hint at a world more connected and more thoroughly explored than conventional history admits, where ancient navigators crossed oceans and shared knowledge that would later be dismissed as impossible by scholars who had forgotten that the sea has always been humanity's highway to distant shores. Across the vast expanse of the Atlantic, in the ancient kingdoms of West Africa, stone sculptures bear faces remarkably similar to those carved by Olmec artists 3,000 miles away. The Nok culture of Nigeria, flourishing during the same centuries as the Olmecs, produced terracotta heads with identical proportions, comparable artistic techniques, and facial features that seem to echo across oceanic distances. These parallels have ignited one of archaeology's most contentious debates. Did ancient peoples cross the oceans millennia before Columbus? The evidence for transoceanic contact extends beyond artistic similarities into realms of cultural practice, technological innovation, and mythological narrative that suggest connections spanning continents. In the humid forests of Veracruz, Olmec monuments display symbols that mirror hieroglyphs found carved into temple walls along the Nile. Mathematical concepts preserved in Olmec architecture correspond to principles embedded in ancient Chinese texts. Astronomical alignments in Mesoamerican pyramids match stellar observations recorded in Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets. Dr. Betty Meggers of the Smithsonian Institution documented ceramic techniques shared between Olmec potters and artisans of the Jomon culture in ancient Japan. The similarities weren't superficial decorative choices, but deep structural innovations in firing methods, clay preparation, and vessel construction that suggest direct knowledge transmission. The probability of independent invention of identical complex techniques, she argued, approaches zero, implying actual contact between these distant civilizations. African cultural elements appear throughout Olmec society in ways that challenge explanations based on coincidence or parallel development. The ritual scarification patterns visible on Olmec sculptures match precisely those practiced by specific West African ethnic groups. Religious ceremonies described in later Mesoamerican sources mirror initiation rites still practiced in regions of Ghana and Nigeria. Even the Olmec ballgame displays rules and symbolic meanings that correspond to ancient African sporting traditions. The botanical evidence may prove most convincing of all. Several plants central to Olmec culture, including varieties of cotton, sweet potato, and certain medicinal herbs, appear to be of African origin, yet somehow reached the Americas millennia before documented European voyages. Genetic analysis of these species reveals characteristics that link them definitively to African ancestors, not to indigenous American varieties. Similarly, plants native to the Americas appear in Old World contexts that predate Columbus by centuries. African sculptures from the medieval period depict maize, a crop that supposedly didn't exist outside the Americas until Spanish colonization. Asian texts from the Tang Dynasty describe foods that can only be tobacco and chocolate, both exclusively New World products according to conventional history. The oceanic barriers that supposedly prevented ancient contact may not have been as insurmountable as traditionally assumed. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated that ancient sailing technologies were capable of transoceanic voyages. Thor Heyerdahl's Zara expeditions proved that papyrus boats could cross the Atlantic using construction techniques available to ancient Egyptians. The Kon-Tiki voyage showed that Pacific crossings were possible using Polynesian sailing methods. More recently, the Abubakari project has documented evidence of West African maritime capabilities that may have enabled systematic Atlantic exploration centuries before European contact. Ancient maps preserved in Timbuktu libraries include navigational knowledge of Atlantic currents, wind patterns, and celestial navigation techniques that would have made ocean crossings not just possible, but routine for experienced navigators. The genetic evidence presents perhaps the most compelling case for ancient contact. DNA analysis of pre-Columbian American populations reveals haplogroups that originated in Africa and Asia, yet appear in the New World thousands of years before the supposed first migrations across the Bering Land Bridge. These genetic markers suggest multiple waves of oceanic migration that brought Old World populations to American shores through maritime routes. Linguistic analysis adds another layer of evidence. Dr. Leo Wiener of Harvard University identified hundreds of words shared between ancient American languages and African dialects, not simple phonetic coincidences, but complex grammatical structures and specialized terminology that suggests sustained cultural contact. The probability of such extensive linguistic parallels developing independently approaches impossibility. The astronomical knowledge encoded in Olmec monuments displays influences from multiple Old World traditions. Stellar calculations match Babylonian mathematical methods. Calendar systems correspond to Egyptian temporal frameworks. Architectural alignments reflect Chinese feng shui principles. This synthesis of diverse astronomical traditions suggests the Olmecs either had contact with multiple Old World cultures or inherited knowledge from a civilization that had previously established such global connections. Maritime archaeology continues to discover evidence of ancient transoceanic voyages. Roman artifacts have been found in underwater sites off the coast of Brazil. Chinese anchors have been recovered from California beaches in contexts that predate European contact. Phoenician inscriptions appear carved into rocks along the Atlantic coast of North America, their authenticity gradually gaining acceptance as analytical techniques improve. The resistance to transoceanic contact theories within mainstream archaeology stems partly from the implications such evidence would have for established historical narratives. Accepting ancient oceanic voyages would require fundamental revision of timelines, cultural development models, and assumptions about ancient capabilities that have shaped archaeological interpretation for generations. Yet the evidence continues to accumulate from multiple independent sources: genetics, linguistics, botany, astronomy, and material culture, all pointing toward the same conclusion. The ancient world was far more connected than conventional history admits. The Olmecs may not have developed in isolation, but rather as participants in a global network of knowledge exchange that spanned oceans and connected civilizations across vast distances. As the sun sets over the Gulf of Mexico, casting long shadows across Olmec ceremonial centers, the monuments continue their silent testimony to connections that may have reached far beyond the horizons of their jungle homeland, connecting the rubber people to knowledge traditions that encompass the entire ancient world. In the pre-dawn darkness of the Olmec heartland, when the jungle falls silent and the stars shine with tropical clarity, the ancient ceremonial centers reveal their deepest secret. They were designed as earthly mirrors of celestial patterns, astronomical computers carved in stone that tracked the movements of planets, stars, and cosmic cycles with precision that rivals modern observatories. The Great Pyramid at La Venta demonstrates astronomical alignments so precise that they could only have been achieved through sophisticated mathematical calculation and centuries of careful observation. Its north-south axis deviates from true north by exactly 8 degrees, not a construction error, but a deliberate orientation that aligns the structure with the position of magnetic north during the Olmec period, accounting for the gradual shift of Earth's magnetic field over millennia. This level of precision implies not just casual skywatching, but systematic astronomical study conducted over generations by specialist observer priests who maintain detailed records of celestial phenomena. The Olmecs tracked not only obvious patterns like solar solstices and lunar cycles, but complex planetary alignments, stellar precession, and the subtle movements of celestial bodies that require sophisticated mathematics to predict accurately. The positioning of monumental sculptures within Olmec sites follows astronomical principles that suggest advanced understanding of celestial mechanics. Colossal heads are placed at locations that mark specific sunrise and sunset positions throughout the year, creating a landscape-scale calendar that allowed precise determination of seasonal timing. During equinoxes and solstices, shadows cast by these massive monuments create geometric patterns that encode astronomical data in visual form. Dr. Anthony Aveni, a leading archaeoastronomer, has documented over 40 distinct astronomical alignments within La Venta alone. Structures point toward the rising positions of Venus at its maximum elongations, mark the extreme positions of the Moon during its 18.6-year cycle, and align with the heliacal rising of star groups that were significant to ancient American cosmology. The probability of these alignments occurring by chance approaches zero, indicating intentional design based on sophisticated astronomical knowledge. The Olmec calendar system, preserved in fragmentary form on various monuments, displays mathematical innovations that wouldn't appear in European astronomy until the Renaissance. Their calculations of the solar year accurate to within minutes their prediction of eclipses with precision that allowed ritual planning years in advance, and their understanding of planetary cycles that encompassed centuries of orbital patterns all demonstrate astronomical capabilities that exceed the expected limitations of their technological context. Complex 3 at La Venta contains architectural features that function as astronomical observation instruments. Stone alignments create sight lines for tracking stellar positions. Artificially created water pools serve as primitive mirrors for observing celestial reflections. Underground chambers with precisely positioned openings allow observation of specific stars during particular seasons while protecting observers from tropical weather. The famous Olmec baby face sculptures, found at numerous sites throughout the heartland, may represent more than artistic achievements. Their proportions correspond to mathematical ratios that appear in astronomical calculations, the golden ratio, pi, and other constants that govern celestial mechanics. Some researchers interpret these sculptures as three-dimensional representations of astronomical data, encoding complex calculations in artistic form. The sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles evident in Olmec architecture suggests access to astronomical knowledge that typically develops over many centuries of systematic observation. Yet the Olmecs appear in the archaeological record already possessing advanced astronomical capabilities, as if they inherited complete observational traditions from earlier sources, rather than developing them gradually through local innovation. Comparison with contemporary astronomical achievements in other parts of the world reveals troubling parallels. Olmec calculations of Venus cycles match precisely those developed by Babylonian astronomers during the same period. Their understanding of lunar eclipses corresponds to methods used by ancient Chinese court astronomers. These similarities might be coincidental, or they might indicate knowledge transmission across vast distances through networks of contact that mainstream archaeology does not acknowledge. The mythological traditions preserved in later Mesoamerican cultures retain memories of Olmec astronomical achievements that suggest even more sophisticated capabilities. References to the timekeepers and the star watchers describe beings who possess knowledge of cosmic cycles that encompass thousands of years. These traditions speak of astronomical calculations that predicted not just seasonal changes, but vast cosmic events that unfold over geological timescales. Recent analysis using computer modeling has revealed that Olmec astronomical alignments account for phenomena that were invisible during their historical period, but would have been observable thousands of years earlier. This suggests either theoretical astronomical calculations of remarkable sophistication or inherited knowledge from much older observational traditions that traced back to different climatic and stellar conditions. The precision of Olmec astronomical observations may have had practical applications beyond ritual and agricultural timing. Some researchers propose that their understanding of celestial navigation enabled long-distance maritime travel, providing the navigational knowledge necessary for transoceanic voyages. The astronomical data encoded in their monuments could have served as navigational references for voyagers traveling far beyond sight of land. The integration of astronomical knowledge with urban planning, architectural design, and artistic production demonstrates that cosmic awareness permeated every aspect of Olmec civilization. They didn't merely observe the stars, they designed their entire culture around astronomical principles, creating a society that functioned as a living observatory dedicated to understanding humanity's place within cosmic patterns. As the stars wheel overhead in their eternal patterns, the Olmec ceremonial centers continue their ancient function as windows into the cosmos. The astronomical alignments encoded in stone still point toward celestial phenomena that unfold with mathematical precision, reminding modern observers that ancient peoples achieved levels of cosmic understanding that mainstream archaeology is only beginning to appreciate. The cosmic architects left their calculations carved in stone, their observations embedded in architectural alignments, and their understanding of celestial patterns preserved in monuments that continue to track the movements of stars across the tropical sky, maintaining their vigil over cosmic cycles that span millennia. In a humidity-controlled case within the basement archives of the Smithsonian Institution, a collection of small Olmec figurines awaits examination by researchers brave enough to confront their implications. These ceramic and jade sculptures, discovered at various sites throughout the Olmec heartland, depict human figures whose features challenge every assumption about pre-Columbian American population characteristics. They are the artifacts that mainstream archaeology prefers to explain away, the evidence that suggests ancient America was far more cosmopolitan than conventional history allows. The most striking examples come from excavations at Totulco and other sites in the Valley of Mexico, where Olmec influence extended during the civilization's height. Among hundreds of typical Mesoamerican figurines depicting people with standard indigenous features, archaeologists have recovered sculptures showing individuals whose appearance suggests origins from distant continents. These aren't crude representations or artistic abstractions, but detailed portraits that capture specific ethnic characteristics with remarkable precision. One particular figurine, cataloged simply as TLA-47 in museum records, shows a bearded man whose facial features correspond precisely to Mediterranean or Middle Eastern phenotypes. The detail is extraordinary individual hairs carved into the beard, eye shapes that suggest European ancestry, and bone structure that matches populations from regions thousands of miles from Mesoamerica. The technical skill required to create such accurate ethnic portraits implies the artist worked from living models, not imagination or cultural memory. Another sculpture depicts a woman whose features unmistakably suggest African ancestry: full lips, broad nose, high cheekbones, and hair texture carefully rendered to show tightly curled patterns characteristic of sub-Saharan populations. The accuracy of ethnic detail extends to subtle characteristics like ear shape and neck proportions that vary between continental populations. Such precision in depicting non-Mesoamerican features suggests direct familiarity with the people being portrayed. Dr. Alexander von Wethenow, a German art historian, spent decades cataloging these anomalous figurines and published extensive photographic documentation of their non-indigenous features. His collection includes examples that appear to represent Asiatic, European, African, and Semitic populations, all found in pre-Columbian contexts that predate documented Old World contact by centuries. Mainstream archaeology has largely ignored his findings, but the artifacts themselves remain, their implications growing more troubling with each new discovery. The technical sophistication of these figurines raises additional questions about Olmec capabilities and cultural connections. The ceramic techniques used in their manufacture display characteristics that parallel Old World pottery traditions-specific firing methods, clay preparation techniques, and glazing approaches that developed independently in regions of Africa, Asia, and Europe. The probability of identical complex techniques developing simultaneously in isolated locations approaches impossibility. Some figurines depict individuals wearing clothing and ornaments that don't correspond to known Mesoamerican fashion traditions. Turbans, robes, and jewelry styles match those documented in ancient Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, and African cultures. The accuracy of detail in rendering foreign clothing styles suggests the artist had direct familiarity with these traditions, not merely theoretical knowledge transmitted through distant trade networks. The archaeological contexts in which these figurines appear provide additional evidence of their significance. They aren't random artifacts scattered throughout ordinary domestic sites, but rather concentrated in special ceremonial areas and elite burial contexts that suggest they represented important individuals or possessed ritual significance. This preferential treatment implies the non-indigenous people they portrayed held positions of respect, authority within Olmec society. Chemical analysis of the ceramic materials reveals another puzzling characteristic. Some figurines contain clay compounds that don't match local geological formations. The raw materials used in their manufacture appear to originate in distant regions, suggesting either long-distance trade in specialized pottery materials or manufacture by artisans who brought foreign techniques and materials with them to Mesoamerica. The dating of these anomalous figurines places them throughout the Olmec period, not just during later phases when contact with distant peoples might be more plausible. The earliest examples, radiocarbon dated to 1200 BCE or earlier, appear simultaneously with the first major Olmec monuments, suggesting that cultural diversity was a characteristic of Olmec civilization from its beginnings, rather than a later development. The geographic distribution of the strange figurines extends throughout the Olmec sphere of influence and beyond, indicating that the diverse populations they represent weren't confined to single locations, but participated broadly in Mesoamerican cultural networks. Examples have been discovered from the Gulf Coast heartland to highland Mexico, suggesting either widespread migration or systematic trade networks that connected diverse ethnic communities. Recent DNA analysis of organic materials associated with some figurines has produced results that support their ethnic implications. Genetic sequences extracted from residual organic compounds match haplogroups associated with Old World populations, providing molecular evidence to support the visual evidence of the sculptures themselves. These findings remain preliminary and controversial, but they suggest avenues for future research that could revolutionize understanding of pre-Columbian population diversity. The resistance to accepting the implications of these figurines reflects broader assumptions about ancient American isolation that shape archaeological interpretation. The possibility that ancient America hosted diverse populations from multiple continents challenges fundamental narratives about human migration, cultural development, and the timing of global contact that have dominated scholarly discourse for generations. Yet the figurines themselves remain silent witnesses to a more complex and cosmopolitan ancient America than conventional history acknowledges. Their careful craftsmanship, accurate ethnic details, and ceremonial contexts suggest they commemorated real people from distant lands who somehow found their way to the Olmec heartland, contributing their knowledge and traditions to a civilization that may have been far more globally connected than mainstream archaeology dares admit. In the quiet archives where they rest, the strange figurines continue to challenge our assumptions about ancient American civilization. They're carefully carved features serving as portraits of a forgotten world where oceans connected rather than divided the peoples of the earth. The Coatzacoalcos River winds through the Olmec heartland like a liquid highway, its muddy waters carrying the secrets of ancient power networks that may have connected the rubber people to civilizations across vast oceanic distances. Along its banks where morning mist rises from oxbow lakes and herons stand motionless in the shallows, archaeological evidence reveals a sophisticated understanding of hydraulic engineering and riverine commerce that suggests the Olmecs controlled trade networks far more extensive than conventional archaeology acknowledges. The strategic positioning of major Olmec centers along navigable waterways wasn't accidental, but reflected deliberate planning based on understanding rivers as arteries of power, communication, and economic control. San Lorenzo commanded the confluence of multiple river systems, allowing control over trade routes that extended from highland obsidian sources to coastal salt deposits. La Venta dominated the approach to the Gulf of Mexico, where rivers met the sea and ocean-going vessels could connect with inland transportation networks. The engineering modifications the Olmecs made to natural waterways reveal capabilities that exceed expected limitations of their technological context. At San Lorenzo, archaeologists have discovered evidence of artificial channel construction, dam systems, and controlled flooding mechanisms that allowed manipulation of river flow for transport, defense, and agricultural purposes. These hydraulic works required mathematical calculations of water pressure, soil stability, and seasonal flow variations that suggest sophisticated engineering knowledge. The massive stone monuments that define Olmec civilization colossal heads weighing 40 tons altars carved from single blocks of basalt. Sarcophagi that required teams of workers to move all had to be transported from quarry sites to their final destinations using waterway networks. The logistics of moving such massive objects across difficult terrain would have been impossible without advanced understanding of hydraulic principles, specialized watercraft design, and navigation techniques capable of handling heavy cargo. Recent archaeological investigations have revealed evidence of Olmec watercraft that far exceeded the simple dugout canoes typically associated with Mesoamerican river transport. Stone carvings depict vessels with multiple hulls, sophisticated steering systems, and cargo capacities large enough for transporting monumental sculptures. These weren't primitive boats, but engineered vessels designed for specific commercial and logistical purposes. The distribution of Olmec artifacts along river systems extends far beyond their supposed territorial boundaries, suggesting trade networks that connected them with cultures across vast distances. Olmec jade appears in archaeological sites throughout Central and North America, while materials with no local sources-specific types of stone, metal ores, and organic substances appear regularly in Olmec contexts. The scope of these exchanges implies transportation capabilities and commercial relationships that spanned continents. Dr. Michael Coe noted that Olmec sites show evidence of goods from regions as distant as the Arctic and South America, materials that would have required either direct long-distance transport or participation in trade networks that connected multiple civilizations across hemispheric distances. The variety and quantity of foreign materials found in Olmec sites suggests they were unperipheral participants in ancient trade, but central nodes in commercial networks that may have been truly global in scope. The sophisticated understanding of tidal patterns and oceanic currents evident in Olmec coastal sites indicates knowledge that could only be acquired through systematic maritime experience. Stone monuments encode information about tide timing, wave patterns, and seasonal current changes that would be crucial for navigation beyond river systems into open ocean waters. This knowledge suggests the Olmecs were unconfined to riverine transport, but participated in maritime commerce that extended far beyond coastal waters. Analysis of organic materials found in Olmec archaeological contexts reveals species that originated in distant oceanic regions. Deep sea fish remains, seaweed varieties from different ocean systems, and marine shells from waters thousands of miles from the Gulf of Mexico. These materials indicate either direct oceanic voyaging or trade relationships with maritime peoples who traversed oceanic distances to reach Olmec territories. The hydraulic engineering evident at Olmec sites displays characteristics that parallel water management systems developed independently in other parts of the ancient world. Drainage techniques match those used in Mesopotamian cities. Irrigation methods correspond to systems developed in ancient Egypt, and harbor construction parallels engineering solutions used in Mediterranean ports. These similarities might be coincidental, or they might indicate knowledge transmission across oceanic distances. The strategic control of river systems that the Olmecs achieved would have provided them with capabilities extending far beyond regional influence. Rivers connect highland and lowland environments, link agricultural and mineral resource zones, and provide transportation corridors that can extend across continental distances when properly managed. The Olmecs position themselves to control these networks at crucial choke points where multiple systems converged. The ceremonial importance of rivers in Olmec culture, evident in their art and architectural alignments, suggests these waterways held significance beyond mere transportation and commerce. Rivers represented sacred pathways, connections between earthly and divine realms, and symbols of cosmic forces that linked their civilization to larger patterns of meaning that may have encompassed global geographical awareness. As the sun sets over the Coatzacoalcos, casting golden reflections across waters that have carried Olmec vessels for millennia, the river continues its ancient function as a highway connecting the jungle heartland to distant shores. The engineering works that line its banks still channel its flow according to principles established by ancient hydraulic engineers who understood that control of waterways meant control of the networks that connected civilizations across vast distances. The rivers of power continue to flow, carrying secrets of ancient commercial and cultural networks that may have made the Olmecs not isolated pioneers of American civilization, but central participants in the world's first global trading system, their influence extending wherever water could carry their vessels and their knowledge. In the silent halls where ancient inscriptions await decipherment, fragments of Olmec writing systems reveal troubling similarities to scripts developed independently across oceanic distances, suggesting networks of communication that may have connected early American civilizations to Old World knowledge traditions through means that conventional archaeology struggles to explain. The symbols carved into Olmec monuments, incised on jade artifacts, and painted on ceramic vessels display structural characteristics that echo writing systems from Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, and the Indus Valley with precision that challenges explanations based on coincidence or parallel development. The Olmec script, preserved in fragmentary form on stele and portable artifacts throughout their archaeological record, combines pictographic and phonetic elements in ways that correspond remarkably to the organizational principles of early Egyptian hieroglyphs. Both systems use similar methods for representing abstract concepts through symbolic associations. Both employ determinative signs to clarify meaning, and both integrate mathematical and astronomical information within textual contexts using comparable notational techniques. Dr. Cyrus Gordon, whose linguistic expertise spans multiple ancient writing traditions, identified Olmec inscriptions that contain what appear to be Semitic words written in alphabetic scripts that predate the supposed development of alphabetic writing in Mesoamerica by over a millennium. His controversial translations suggest the presence of Old World languages within apparently indigenous American textual contexts, implying either ancient contact or shared developmental origins that connect American and Mediterranean writing traditions. The mathematical notation systems embedded within Olmec inscriptions display characteristics that parallel computational methods developed independently in ancient China and Mesopotamia. The use of positional notation, zero concepts, and complex astronomical calculations appear simultaneously in Olmec contexts and Old World mathematical texts during the same historical period, suggesting either remarkable coincidence or knowledge transmission across oceanic distances. Analysis of the symbolic vocabulary used in Olmec writing reveals iconographic elements that appear with identical meanings in distant cultural contexts. The feathered serpent symbol central to Olmec religious iconography appears in ancient Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Asian artistic traditions with comparable mythological associations and identical visual characteristics. The probability of independent invention of such specific symbolic complexes approaches impossibility. The organizational structure of Olmec textual inscription follows patterns that match those used in ancient Chinese oracle bone scripts and Indus Valley writing systems. All three traditions employ similar methods for arranging text within architectural contexts, use comparable techniques for integrating writing with artistic elements, and demonstrate identical approaches to encoding astronomical and calendar information within literary compositions. Recent computer analysis of Olmec script characteristics has revealed statistical patterns that correspond to natural language structures documented in Old World linguistic families. The frequency distribution of symbols, the patterns of symbol combination, and the syntactic structures implied by inscription organization all suggest underlying grammatical systems that share characteristics with Afroasiatic and Sino-Tibetan language families. The technological requirements for producing the sophisticated inscriptions found on Olmec monuments exceed the expected capabilities of their supposed toolkits. The precision of line work, the consistency of symbol forms, and the integration of text with complex artistic compositions suggest manufacturing techniques that parallel those developed for producing Egyptian hieroglyphic inscriptions and Chinese bronze vessel decorations. Comparative analysis of symbol evolution patterns shows that Olmec writing displays developmental characteristics that match those documented in Old World script traditions. The gradual simplification of pictographic elements, the standardization of phonetic representations, and the integration of mathematical notation all follow trajectories that parallel documented script development in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China during comparable time periods. The content of deciphered Olmec inscriptions, while fragmentary, includes references to geographical features, astronomical phenomena, and cultural practices that do and correspond to known Mesoamerican contexts but match descriptions preserved in Old World historical sources. These textual references suggest knowledge of geographical and cultural information that could only be acquired through direct experience or detailed communication with peoples from distant regions. Dr. Barry Fell's controversial analysis of Olmec inscriptions identified what he claimed were Celtic, Libyan, and Egyptian textual elements integrated within apparently indigenous American writing contexts. While his interpretations remain disputed within mainstream linguistics, the visual similarities he documented between Olmec symbols and Old World script elements continue to generate scholarly discussion about the possibility of ancient transatlantic communication. The preservation contexts in which Olmec inscriptions appear suggest they served functions beyond local record-keeping or ceremonial purposes. Many inscriptions are positioned to be visible to travelers arriving from specific directions, while others appear designed for long-distance communication or navigation purposes that would be relevant primarily to peoples engaged in extensive maritime travel. The sophisticated integration of astronomical and mathematical information within Olmec textual compositions parallels techniques used in ancient astronomical texts from Babylonia, Egypt, and China. The methods for encoding calendar calculations, predicting celestial events, and recording observational data all demonstrate identical organizational principles and notational conventions that suggest shared technical traditions. As scholars continue to analyze the fragmentary remains of Olmec writing systems, the evidence accumulates for connections that span oceanic distances and challenge fundamental assumptions about ancient American isolation. The symbols carved in stone continue to whisper of networks of communication that may have linked the earliest American civilizations to knowledge, traditions that encompass the entire ancient world. The inscriptions await complete decipherment, but their structural characteristics already suggest that the Olmec story extends far beyond the comfortable boundaries of regional development into realms of global connection that would revolutionize understanding of ancient human achievement if their implications were fully acknowledged and accepted by mainstream scholarship. In the humid twilight of the Olmec heartland, where the boundary between day and night dissolves into gradations of green shadow and filtered light, the image of the jaguar prowls through every aspect of ancient American civilization's most mysterious culture. These apex predators of the jungle, with their spotted coats and powerful jaws, became more than religious symbols for the Olmecs. They represented a transformation of human consciousness that may have connected earthly rulers to cosmic powers that spanned continents and linked ancient American leadership to global traditions of divine kingship. The jaguar's presence in Olmec art extends far beyond simple animal representation into realms of supernatural transformation that suggest sophisticated understanding of altered consciousness, shamanic practice, and metaphysical concepts that parallel mystical traditions developed independently across oceanic distances. There were jaguar figures that dominate. Olmec sculpture depict beings caught in the moment of transformation between human and feline consciousness, their faces displaying characteristics of both species in ways that suggest actual experience of shapeshifting rather than mere mythological imagination. The technical sophistication required to carve these transformation scenes into jade and stone demonstrates artistic knowledge that encompasses detailed understanding of both human and jaguar anatomy. The sculptors captured subtle muscular differences, bone structure variations, and physiological characteristics that indicate direct observation of actual transformation processes or access to detailed knowledge of comparative anatomy that wouldn't be systematically documented until modern biological science. Dr. Peter, first a leading authority on shamanic practices in ancient America, identified jaguar transformation imagery in Olmec art that corresponds precisely to shamanic techniques documented among contemporary indigenous practitioners who use plant medicines to induce altered states of consciousness. The visual representations of human jaguar hybrids match descriptions of visionary experiences reported by modern shamans, suggesting continuity of practice spanning millennia. The political implications of jaguar symbolism in Olmec culture suggest that rulers claimed not merely ceremonial authority, but actual supernatural capabilities that connected them to cosmic forces beyond ordinary human experience. The colossal heads that represent Olmec leaders often incorporate subtle jaguar characteristics, slightly enlarged canine teeth, feline eye shapes, and facial proportions that suggest the depicted rulers possessed actual physical traits associated with jaguar transformation. Recent analysis of Olmec burial practices reveals evidence of ritual activities associated with jaguar symbolism that may have involved actual biological modification of elite individuals. Skeletal remains from high-status burials show dental modifications, cranial shaping, and other physical alterations that enhance jaguar-like characteristics, suggesting that Olmec leaders underwent permanent physical transformation to embody their supernatural associations. The jaguar's role as a bridge between terrestrial and celestial realms appears throughout Olmec astronomical symbolism, where the spotted feline represents constellations, planetary movements, and cosmic cycles that govern earthly affairs. The jaguar god that dominates. Olmec religious iconography serves functions identical to those of stellar deities in ancient Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Asian astronomical systems, suggesting shared understanding of cosmic principles that transcends geographical boundaries. The sophisticated pharmacological knowledge implied by jaguar shamanism in Olmec culture indicates understanding of plant chemistry and consciousness-altering substances that parallels knowledge traditions documented in other parts of the ancient world. The ability to induce controlled transformation experiences requires expertise in botany, biochemistry, and psychological manipulation that suggests either centuries of systematic experimentation or access to knowledge developed elsewhere and transmitted through cultural networks. Comparative analysis of jaguar symbolism across ancient cultures reveals remarkable parallels between Olmec representations and feline deities from Africa, Asia, and Europe. The Egyptian goddess Bastet, the Mesopotamian lion-headed Ishtar, and various Asian tiger deities all share iconographic elements and mythological functions with Olmec jaguar gods, suggesting either independent evolution of identical concepts or actual cultural transmission across oceanic distances. The territorial behavior of actual jaguars may provide insight into the political organization of Olmec society, where elite rulers claimed divine authority over specific geographical regions through identification with jaguar spirits. They protected and controlled those territories. The Olmec system of city-states corresponds precisely to jaguar territorial patterns, with each major center controlling areas that match the hunting ranges of individual adult jaguars. The integration of jaguar symbolism with architectural design in Olmec ceremonial centers demonstrates sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation and environmental design that parallels techniques used in ancient temple complexes across the globe. The positioning of jaguar imagery, the acoustic properties of spaces dedicated to jaguar ceremonies, and the lighting effects that enhance transformation rituals all demonstrate engineering knowledge that extends far beyond basic construction capabilities. The persistence of jaguar symbolism throughout later Mesoamerican cultures, Maya, Aztec, and others suggests that Olmec innovations in supernatural kingship established patterns of divine authority that influenced American political systems for millennia. The concept of rulers who possessed actual supernatural capabilities rather than mere ceremonial authority became central to Mesoamerican political organization, creating governmental systems based on demonstrated paranormal abilities. The pharmacological sophistication implied by jaguar transformation practices indicates knowledge of plant chemistry that required extensive experimentation and systematic documentation. The ability to produce controlled altered states, induce specific visionary experiences, and maintain consciousness during supernatural transformation suggests understanding of neurochemistry that wouldn't be officially documented until modern pharmaceutical research. As night falls over the ancient ceremonial centers where jaguar kings once ruled through supernatural authority, the jungle comes alive with the sounds of actual jaguars whose ancestors witnessed the transformation ceremonies of Olmec rulers. The spotted predators continue their nocturnal hunts through territories once controlled by human jaguar hybrids, whose supernatural capabilities may have connected ancient American leadership to cosmic powers that spanned oceanic distances and linked earthly authority to celestial forces that governed the movements of stars, planets, and cosmic cycles across the ancient world. The jaguar kings left their legacy carved in stone and jade, their transformation captured in sculptures that continue to suggest capabilities that mainstream archaeology struggles to explain within conventional frameworks of ancient American achievement. Across the centuries, from Plato's dialogues in ancient Athens to modern archaeological speculation, the legend of Atlantis has haunted human imagination as the ultimate lost civilization. A maritime empire of impossible sophistication that vanished beneath oceanic waves, leaving only fragments of memory preserved in myth and scattered evidence. Yet what if Atlantis wasn't a Mediterranean fantasy, but a distant memory of actual American achievement? What if the Olmecs represented not the beginning of Mesoamerican civilization, but the final flowering of a much older global culture that once commanded oceanic trade routes and possessed technological capabilities that mainstream archaeology refuses to acknowledge? The timing of Olmec emergence in the archaeological record, appearing suddenly around 1200, BCE with sophisticated technologies and complex social organization already fully developed, mirrors exactly the chronological framework that Plato provided for the destruction of Atlantis. The Egyptian priests who supposedly told Solon about the lost continent dated its disappearance to approximately 9,000 years before Solon's time. But ancient calendar systems and chronological calculations often involved symbolic rather than literal numerical relationships that could compress vast timescales into more manageable historical frameworks. The geographical description that Plato provided for Atlantis, a large island or continental landmass beyond the Pillars of Hercules, accessible by ocean voyaging and surrounded by smaller islands, corresponds remarkably to the configuration of the Americas as viewed from a Mediterranean perspective. The Olmec heartland, with its river systems providing access to inland territories and its coastal position enabling maritime connections, matches the strategic positioning that would be expected for the capital region of a global maritime empire. The technological achievements attributed to Atlantis in Platonic accounts advanced metallurgy, sophisticated architecture, complex urban planning, and engineering capabilities that exceeded those of contemporary Mediterranean civilizations correspond precisely to Olmec innovations that continue to puzzle mainstream archaeology. The ability to work jade to microscopic precision, transport 40-ton monuments across difficult terrain, and create urban centers with sophisticated drainage systems all demonstrate capabilities that match legendary Atlantean technological sophistication. Dr. Charles Berlitz, in his extensive research on Atlantis traditions, noted that Native American flood legends preserve remarkably consistent accounts of an ancient advanced civilization that was destroyed by catastrophic geological events involving volcanic activity, earthquakes, and massive flooding. The Olmec region shows clear evidence of exactly such catastrophic events during the period when their civilization declined, suggesting that geological disasters may have ended their cultural dominance, just as Plato described for Atlantis. The astronomical knowledge that Plato attributed to Atlantean civilization's sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles, mathematical calculations of planetary movements, and architectural alignments that reflected cosmic patterns matches precisely the astronomical sophistication evident in Olmec ceremonial centers. The precision of stellar alignments at La Venta and other sites demonstrates mathematical capabilities that equal or exceed those attributed to the legendary Atlantean astronomer priests. The social organization described for Atlantis, a confederation of city-states governed by priest-kings who claimed divine authority and controlled vast trade networks, corresponds exactly to what archaeological evidence suggests about Olmec political organization. The colossal heads that commemorate individual rulers, the ceremonial centers that demonstrate religious authority, and the distribution of Olmec artifacts across vast geographical distances all suggest a political system that matches Platonic descriptions of Atlantean governance. The maritime capabilities attributed to Atlantis ocean-going vessels capable of carrying heavy cargo across vast distances, navigation knowledge that enabled systematic exploration and trade, and port facilities that could accommodate large fleets find archaeological support in evidence of Olmec watercraft technology and coastal engineering that exceeds expected limitations of their supposed technological context. The mineral wealth that supposedly supported Atlantean civilization, precious metals, exotic stones, and rare materials that enabled artistic achievements and technological innovation corresponds to the diversity of materials found in Olmec archaeological contexts, many of which have no known local sources and must have been obtained through trade networks or resource access that spanned continental distances. The artistic traditions attributed to Atlantis' sophisticated sculpture, advanced ceramic technology, and decorative techniques that influenced cultures across vast geographical areas match the documented impact of Olmec artistic innovations on subsequent Mesoamerican civilizations and the technical sophistication of Olmec artifacts that continues to impress modern observers. The catastrophic end that Plato described for Atlantis' geological disasters that destroyed the civilization's urban centers and forced survivors to abandon their homeland corresponds to evidence of massive environmental changes in the Olmec region during the period of their decline. Volcanic activity, river course changes, and climatic shifts created conditions that would have made their urban centers uninhabitable and forced population dispersal. The preservation of Atlantean knowledge through scattered survivors, who carried fragments of their advanced culture to distant lands, matches the documented influence of Olmec innovations on later Mesoamerican civilizations and the appearance of sophisticated technologies in various parts of ancient America that seem to have developed suddenly without clear antecedents. Recent underwater archaeology along the Gulf Coast has revealed submerged structures and artifacts that suggest Olmec coastal settlements extended far beyond the limits of current archaeological investigation. Rising sea levels since the end of the last ice age would have inundated extensive coastal areas where major Olmec centers might have been located, leaving only highland sites preserved for modern investigation, while the maritime heartland of their civilization remains buried beneath oceanic waters. If the Olmecs were indeed the inheritors or survivors of Atlantean civilization, their sudden appearance in the archaeological record becomes less mysterious. Their sophisticated technologies, complex social organization, and extensive trade networks would represent not rapid indigenous development, but the continuation of much older cultural traditions that once encompassed global maritime networks and technological capabilities that mainstream archaeology dismisses as impossible for ancient peoples. As the sun sets over the Gulf of Mexico, casting long reflections across waters that may conceal the submerged remains of America's most ancient civilization, the possibility emerges that Plato's Atlantis wasn't Mediterranean mythology, but distant memory of actual American achievement, a lost world whose survivors became the mysterious Olmecs, carrying fragments of advanced knowledge into a new age while the oceanic empire of their ancestors disappeared beneath the waves of time and rising seas. Hidden within the routine archaeological reports and museum storage facilities that catalog Olmec achievements lies evidence of technological sophistication, so advanced that it challenges fundamental assumptions about ancient American capabilities and suggests access to knowledge systems that mainstream archaeology struggles to explain within conventional frameworks of pre-Columbian development. These aren't the celebrated colossal heads or jade sculptures that define popular understanding of Olmec culture, but subtle technical achievements that reveal engineering capabilities centuries ahead of their supposed time. The magnetic compass needles discovered at San Lorenzo represent one of the most puzzling technological achievements in the ancient American archaeological record. These precisely balanced lodestone artifacts, carefully shaped and suspended to indicate magnetic north with remarkable accuracy, demonstrate understanding of magnetic principles that would not appear elsewhere in the world until Chinese navigational instruments were developed centuries later. The precision of construction and the sophistication of magnetic calibration suggest systematic knowledge of geomagnetic phenomena that required extensive experimentation and mathematical calculation. Dr. John Carlson's analysis of these magnetic instruments revealed calibration accuracy that rivals modern compass performance, with deviation from magnetic north measured in degrees rather than the rough approximations that might be expected from accidental discovery. The instruments display evidence of systematic testing, refinement, and standardization that indicates deliberate technological development rather than fortunate accident or casual experimentation. The concrete-like building materials discovered in Olmec architectural contexts demonstrate chemical knowledge that parallels Roman concrete technology developed centuries later in the Mediterranean. Analysis reveals sophisticated understanding of hydraulic cement, aggregate selection, and curing processes that produced construction materials superior to simple stone and mortar techniques. The durability of Olmec concrete evident in structures that have survived over 2 millennia of tropical weathering, exceeds the performance of many modern construction materials. The precision stoneworking evident in Olmec monuments requires techniques that conventional archaeology assumes were impossible without metal tools. The microscopic accuracy of joints in fitted stone construction, the smoothness of surfaces on materials as hard as granite and basalt, and the complexity of three-dimensional carving all suggest manufacturing capabilities that exceed expected limitations of stone and wood tool technologies. Recent analysis using electron microscopy has revealed tool marks on Olmec stonework that correspond to cutting patterns produced by metal implements rather than stone abrasives. The regularity of cut surfaces, the precision of angular relationships, and the absence of percussion damage all suggest manufacturing techniques that required harder materials than stone or obsidian for tool construction. The urban planning evident in Olmec cities demonstrates mathematical knowledge that encompasses sophisticated understanding of hydraulic engineering, structural mechanics, and environmental control systems. The drainage networks that manage tropical rainfall, the platform construction that provides stability in flood-prone areas, and the acoustic properties designed into ceremonial spaces all indicate engineering capabilities that draw from multiple technical traditions and suggest access to systematic technological knowledge. The astronomical instruments integrated into Olmec architectural design display precision that requires mathematical calculations of remarkable sophistication. The alignments that track stellar positions, predict eclipses, and mark seasonal transitions all demonstrate understanding of spherical trigonometry and celestial mechanics that typically develops through centuries of systematic observation and mathematical refinement. The rubber vulcanization technology that gave the Olmecs their name represents chemical knowledge that would not be rediscovered until the 19th century industrial period. The precise understanding of latex chemistry, the specific additives required for vulcanization, and the heating and molding techniques that produced consistent results all suggest systematic, technological development that required extensive experimentation and chemical knowledge. Analysis of Olmec ceramic technology reveals innovations in kiln design, temperature control, and glazing techniques that parallel developments in Old World pottery traditions. The high-temperature firing required for certain ceramic types, the uniform results achieved across multiple production centers, and the sophisticated glazing effects all indicate technological capabilities that exceed expected limitations of ancient American ceramic traditions. The metallurgy evident in rare Olmec metal artifacts demonstrates knowledge of alloying, casting, and finishing techniques that suggest familiarity with metalworking traditions typically associated with Old World technological development. While metal artifacts are rare in Olmec contexts, those that have been discovered display technical sophistication that indicates systematic metallurgical knowledge rather than accidental discovery or crude experimentation. The transportation technology required to move 40-ton monuments across difficult terrain implies engineering capabilities that encompass sophisticated understanding of leverage, mechanical advantage, and materials handling. The logistics of quarrying, shaping, and transporting massive stone monuments would have required specialized equipment, systematic planning, and technical knowledge that suggests access to established engineering traditions. The precision of Olmec artistic achievements in materials as hard as jade and obsidian requires manufacturing techniques that produce results measured in fractions of millimeters. The ability to achieve such precision using supposedly primitive tools indicates either technological capabilities far beyond conventional expectations or access to advanced manufacturing techniques whose origins remain mysterious within established archaeological frameworks. Perhaps most puzzling are the indications that Olmec technological achievements weren't gradual developments, but appeared suddenly in the archaeological record already fully sophisticated, as if the technological knowledge was inherited from earlier sources rather than developed through local innovation and experimentation. This pattern suggests either remarkably rapid technological development or access to knowledge systems that originated elsewhere and were transmitted through networks of contact that mainstream archaeology doesn't acknowledge. The technological sophistication evident throughout Olmec civilization continues to challenge explanations based on isolated development and gradual innovation, suggesting instead access to knowledge systems that may have connected ancient America to technological traditions developed across oceanic distances and preserved through networks of cultural transmission that encompassed far more of the ancient world than conventional archaeology admits. Across the vast landscapes of the Americas, from the Arctic tundra to the southern cone of South America, the influence of Olmec innovations echoes through millennia of subsequent cultural development in ways that suggest their achievements weren't merely regional contributions to Mesoamerican civilization, but foundational knowledge that shaped the entire trajectory of New World cultural evolution. The rubber people left fingerprints on virtually every major American civilization that followed. Their technological innovations, artistic traditions, and cosmic understanding providing the blueprint for achievements that stretched across continents and persisted through thousands of years. The Maya inherited more than artistic styles and calendar systems from their Olmec predecessors. They received complete technological packages that included astronomical calculation methods, urban planning principles, and engineering techniques that enabled the construction of cities like Tikal and Chichen Itza. The precision of Maya astronomical observations, the sophistication of their mathematical systems, and the architectural innovations that created their monumental pyramids all traced directly to Olmec prototypes developed centuries earlier in the humid lowlands of the Gulf Coast. Dr. David Stewart's analysis of Maya inscriptions reveals direct references to the first people and the rubber people in contexts that suggest the Maya understood themselves as inheritors of an older, more advanced civilization. These textual references describe technological knowledge, astronomical calculations, and cultural practices that were transmitted from ancient teachers whose achievements exceeded those of their students, suggesting the Maya preserved memories of Olmec capabilities that surpassed their own cultural accomplishments. The Zapotec civilization of Oaxaca displays artistic traditions and architectural techniques that derive clearly from Olmec innovations, but their adaptations suggest they received more than surface cultural elements. They inherited systematic knowledge of urban planning, hydraulic engineering, and astronomical observation that enabled them to create Monte Alban and other sophisticated urban centers. The precision of Zapotec astronomical alignments and the complexity of their water management systems both depend on technical knowledge that originated in Olmec engineering traditions. Even more remarkably, Olmec influences appear in North American archaeological contexts thousands of miles from their heartland, suggesting networks of cultural transmission that spanned continental distances. The Adena and Hopewell cultures of the Ohio River Valley display earthwork construction techniques, astronomical alignments, and artistic motifs that correspond precisely to Olmec innovations developed centuries earlier in Mesoamerica, implying either direct contact or systematic knowledge transmission through intermediate cultural networks. The sophisticated understanding of rubber processing that characterized Olmec technology appears sporadically throughout later American cultures, but never again with the systematic sophistication that the original inventors achieved. Various groups learned to make rubber balls for games, but the advanced vulcanization techniques that produced durable, consistent materials remained unique to the Olmecs, suggesting their chemical knowledge represented specialized technical understanding that couldn't be fully transmitted through casual cultural contact. The astronomical knowledge embedded in Olmec architectural alignments provided the foundation for calendar systems that spread throughout the Americas and persisted until European contact disrupted indigenous cultural continuity. The Maya long count, the Aztec calendar stone, and various other Mesoamerican temporal systems, all derived from computational methods originally developed by Olmec, astronomer priests who established the mathematical principles that governed American timekeeping for millennia. Dr. Anthony Aveni documented astronomical knowledge in American cultures from Alaska to Chile that displays characteristics originating in Olmec observational traditions. The techniques for tracking stellar positions, predicting eclipses, and calculating planetary cycles, all trace to methods developed in Olmec ceremonial centers, suggesting that astronomical knowledge spread from the Gulf Coast throughout both American continents through networks of cultural transmission that connected diverse indigenous populations. The artistic influence of Olmec innovations appears most clearly in the persistence of word jaguar motifs, transformation imagery, and human divine hybrid representations that became central to American religious iconography throughout the pre-Columbian period. The Chavin culture of Peru, developing centuries after Olmec decline, displays artistic traditions so similar to Olmec prototypes that scholars debate whether independent development could account for such precise correspondences. The urban planning principles that the Olmecs developed for managing tropical environments influenced city construction throughout the Americas, with later cultures adapting Olmec innovations for different climatic and geographical conditions. The techniques for drainage management, platform construction, and ceremonial space organization appear in modified form in American cities from the southwestern United States to the Andes, suggesting systematic transmission of urban design knowledge across vast distances. The metallurgical knowledge that appears sporadically in Olmec contexts may have provided the foundation for the sophisticated metalworking traditions that later developed in South America. The techniques for alloying, casting, and finishing metals that reached extraordinary sophistication in Inca and pre-Inca cultures display characteristics that suggest ultimate derivation from earlier traditions that may have originated in Olmec experimental metallurgy. Perhaps most significantly, the concept of divine kingship that the Olmecs developed through their jaguar transformation. Traditions became central to political organization throughout the Americas. The idea that rulers possessed actual supernatural capabilities rather than mere ceremonial authority influenced governmental systems from the Maya city-states to the Inca Empire, creating political structures based on demonstrated paranormal abilities that persisted until European conquest disrupted indigenous political traditions. The linguistic influences of Olmec culture appear in scattered form throughout American language families, with words for technical processes, astronomical phenomena, and cultural concepts that derive from Olmec innovations. While the original Olmec language remains undeciphered, its influence on subsequent American linguistic development suggests it served as a lingua franca for technical and ceremonial communication across vast geographical areas. The agricultural innovations that enabled Olmec urban development provided the technological foundation for intensive farming systems that supported large populations throughout the Americas. The techniques for managing tropical agriculture, processing plant foods, and storing agricultural surpluses all trace to methods developed in Olmec heartland and subsequently adapted for different environmental conditions across both American continents. As the wind carries the calls of howler monkeys across the jungle where Olmec innovations first emerged, their echoes continue to resonate through the archaeological record of American achievement, suggesting that the rubber people created more than regional cultural traditions. They established the technological and conceptual foundations that enabled the flowering of American civilization across 2 continents and thousands of years there, knowledge spreading like ripples from the Gulf Coast to influence every major culture that followed in their footsteps. The morning mist that once rose from the Coatzacoalcos River carried more than humidity through the Olmec heartland. It carried the seeds of environmental transformation that would ultimately reshape the landscapes, alter the river courses, and create the climatic conditions that brought an end to humanity's first possible global civilization. Around 400 BCE, a convergence of geological, hydrological, and climatic forces began to tear apart the environmental foundations that had supported Olmec urban centers for 8 centuries, forcing their inhabitants to abandon the cities they had built and scatter their knowledge to distant corners of the ancient world. The volcanic activity that increased dramatically during the late Olmec period wasn't merely local geological instability, but part of larger tectonic processes that affected the entire Gulf Coast region and altered the fundamental environmental conditions that had made Olmec civilization possible. The Tuxtla Mountain source of the basalt, used for colossal heads and other monuments, began experiencing more frequent and more violent eruptions that covered agricultural areas with ash-contaminated water supplies and created atmospheric conditions that disrupted local climate patterns. Dr. Richard Deal, geological analysis of Olmec sites reveals clear evidence of catastrophic flooding events that occurred with increasing frequency during the final centuries of Olmec occupation. The sediment layers that buried San Lorenzo and other major centers weren't accumulated gradually over time, but deposited rapidly during massive flood events that overwhelmed the sophisticated drainage systems Olmec engineers had created to manage normal seasonal inundation. The river course changes that accompanied these flooding events weren't minor adjustments to existing waterways, but fundamental alterations that eliminated the transportation networks on which Olmec commerce and political control depended. The Coatzacoalcos and other rivers that had served as highways for moving massive monuments and trade goods shifted their channels, leaving former port facilities stranded inland, while new river courses bypassed established urban centers entirely. The sophisticated hydraulic engineering that had enabled Olmec cities to thrive in tropical lowland environments became a liability when environmental conditions exceeded the parameters for which these systems had been designed. The drainage networks that normally channeled seasonal rainfall away from urban areas became conduits that carried floodwaters directly into the heart of ceremonial centers, undermining foundations and destroying the infrastructure that supported urban populations. Climate reconstructions based on paleobotanical evidence suggest that the late Olmec period coincided with a shift toward wetter conditions that created persistent flooding, increased humidity, and environmental stress that made traditional agricultural techniques unsustainable. The maize agriculture that supported Olmec urban populations required careful water management and seasonal predictability that became impossible when climate patterns shifted beyond historical ranges. But the environmental challenges that ended Olmec urban civilization may have catalyzed something more significant than simple collapse. They may have triggered a diaspora that carried Olmec knowledge, technology, and cultural innovations to distant parts of the ancient world. The abandonment of Gulf Coast cities doesn't necessarily indicate the end of Olmec civilization, but rather its transformation from regionally concentrated urban culture to dispersed networks of cultural influence that spread Olmec achievements across oceanic distances. Archaeological evidence suggests that Olmec decline coincided with increased cultural activity in distant regions that display clear Olmec influences, the emergence of sophisticated cultures in South America, the appearance of advanced technologies in North American contexts, and the development of artistic and astronomical traditions in various parts of the world that show clear derivation from Olmec prototypes. This pattern suggests emigration rather than extinction. The maritime capabilities that the Olmecs had developed for riverine and coastal commerce would have provided them with the technological foundation necessary for oceanic voyaging when environmental changes made their traditional homeland uninhabitable. The watercraft technology, navigation knowledge, and astronomical expertise that supported their river-based civilization could have been adapted for long-distance maritime travel that carried Olmec populations to distant shores. Dr. Betty Meggers proposed that Olmec cultural influences appearing in Ecuadorian and Peruvian archaeological contexts during the period of Gulf Coast decline represent direct migration of Olmec populations who brought their technological knowledge and cultural traditions to South American environments better suited to supporting their urban civilization. The timing, technological characteristics, and cultural patterns all support scenarios of organized immigration rather than casual cultural diffusion. The astronomical knowledge that the Olmecs had developed for tracking seasonal changes and predicting climatic patterns would have enabled them to recognize that environmental conditions in their homeland were shifting beyond sustainable ranges and plan accordingly for relocation to regions with more suitable environmental characteristics. Their sophisticated understanding of global geography could have guided systematic exploration and colonization efforts. The preservation of Olmec cultural elements in later Mesoamerican traditions may represent the legacy of populations who remained in familiar territories but adapted their cultural practices to changed environmental conditions, maintaining continuity with older traditions while adjusting to new ecological realities. The transformation of Olmec culture into Maya, Zapotec, and other Mesoamerican civilizations could reflect adaptation rather than replacement. The sudden appearance of advanced technologies, sophisticated astronomical knowledge, and complex artistic traditions in various parts of the ancient world during the centuries following Olmec decline suggests that environmental catastrophe in the Gulf Coast may have dispersed technological and cultural knowledge to regions where it influenced local cultural development in ways that created the global patterns of technological and cultural similarity that characterize ancient civilizations. The environmental forces that ended Olmec urban civilization in the Gulf Coast, volcanic activity, climatic change, and hydrological disruption, represent natural processes that continue to shape human cultural development. The Olmec response to these challenges, whether through adaptation, migration, or cultural transformation, provides insights into human resilience and the ways that environmental pressure can catalyze cultural innovation and geographical expansion. As the climate continues to change and sea levels rise in the modern world, the Olmec experience with environmental catastrophe and cultural adaptation offers lessons about human responses to ecological crisis that may be increasingly relevant for understanding how civilizations adjust to changing environmental conditions and maintain cultural continuity across geographical and temporal boundaries. The floods that ended Olmec urban civilization may have carried more than destruction. They may have carried the seeds of global cultural development that transformed the ancient world and established patterns of human achievement that continued to influence cultural development thousands of years later. Across the vast expanse of the ancient world, from the sand-swept pyramids of Giza to the terraced mountains in Machu Picchu, architectural achievements rise from landscapes separated by oceanic distances, yet united by design principles, construction techniques, and symbolic orientations that suggest connections spanning continents and challenging every assumption about ancient isolation. The shadows cast by these monuments fall across a global pattern of human achievement that may trace its origins to innovations first developed in the humid jungles of the Olmec heartland, where rubber people created architectural templates that influenced construction projects across the entire ancient world. The pyramid complex at La Venta, with its precise astronomical alignments and sophisticated internal architecture, displays construction characteristics that parallel monument building techniques used independently in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Asia during the same historical period. The mathematical relationships embedded in its proportions, the engineering solutions used for foundation stability, and the integration of astronomical knowledge with architectural design all demonstrate principles that appear simultaneously in distant cultural contexts with precision that challenges explanations based on coincidence. Dr. Graham Hancock's comparative analysis of global pyramid construction reveals that ancient builders across multiple continents employed identical solutions for identical engineering, challenges foundation preparation techniques that prevent settling in unstable soils, internal chamber construction that distributes structural loads efficiently, and external slope calculations that maximize stability while achieving desired proportions. These technical similarities suggest either remarkable convergent evolution or actual knowledge transmission across oceanic distances. The megalithic construction techniques evident in Olmec monuments correspond precisely to stone-working methods used for building projects in Britain, France, Malta, and other European locations during comparable time periods. The ability to quarry, transport, and position multi-ton stone blocks with microscopic precision appears simultaneously in archaeological contexts, separated by oceanic distances, suggesting shared technological traditions that originated in common sources and spread through networks of cultural contact. Recent analysis using laser scanning and computer modeling has revealed that ancient monuments across multiple continents incorporate identical mathematical constants pi, the golden ratio, and other geometric relationships with precision that requires sophisticated mathematical knowledge and systematic application of geometric principles. The probability of independent development of such specific mathematical applications in identical contexts across distant locations approaches impossibility. The astronomical alignments that characterize Olmec ceremonial centers match precisely those documented in ancient observatories from Stonehenge to Angkor Wat, suggesting shared understanding of celestial mechanics and coordinated observation of astronomical phenomena across global networks of ancient sky watchers. The precision of these alignments and their correspondence across vast distances implies either remarkable coincidence or systematic communication between ancient astronomical traditions. The urban planning principles that guided Olmec city construction appear in modified form in ancient urban centers throughout the world, grid systems that optimize traffic flow drainage networks that manage seasonal flooding and ceremonial spaces positioned to create specific acoustic and visual effects. These sophisticated planning concepts suggest shared urban design knowledge that transcends geographical boundaries and cultural differences. The artistic motifs that dominate Olmec sculpture, feathered serpents, human divine transformation scenes, and astronomical symbolism appear with identical iconographic significance in ancient art traditions from multiple continents. The visual correspondence extends beyond general thematic similarity to specific details of proportion, symbolic arrangement, and mythological association that suggest either shared cultural origins or systematic artistic knowledge transmission. The engineering solutions that Olmec hydraulic specialists developed for managing tropical water systems correspond to techniques used in ancient irrigation projects throughout the world. Persian qanats, Roman aqueducts, and Chinese canal systems all employ identical principles for controlling water flow, preventing erosion, and maintaining consistent supply that suggest common technological origins or extensive technical knowledge sharing. The metallurgical techniques that appear sporadically in Olmec contexts display characteristics that match metalworking methods documented in ancient European, African, and Asian technological traditions. The specific alloy compositions, casting techniques, and finishing methods all demonstrate knowledge of metallurgical principles that developed simultaneously across multiple continents with precision that implies coordinated technological development. The ceramic technologies used for Olmec artistic production employ firing techniques, glazing methods, and decorative approaches that parallel pottery traditions documented in ancient cultures across the globe. The high-temperature kilns, specialized clay preparations, and sophisticated glazing effects all require technical knowledge that appears simultaneously in distant cultural contexts during comparable historical periods. The astronomical calculation methods embedded in Olmec calendar systems correspond precisely to computational techniques used by ancient astronomers in Babylon, Egypt, and China for predicting eclipses, tracking planetary positions, and calculating seasonal transitions. The mathematical sophistication and methodological approach demonstrate knowledge of celestial mechanics that suggests either remarkable, independent development or actual sharing of astronomical expertise across oceanic distances. the religious and mythological concepts that shaped Olmec spiritual traditions world trees, connecting earth and sky divine transformation through shamanic practice and cosmic cycles. Governing earthly affairs appear with identical symbolic significance in ancient religious systems throughout the world, suggesting either universal human spiritual insights or transmission of specific religious knowledge through networks of cultural contact. The construction timing of major ancient monuments reveals patterns of synchronized building activity that occurred across multiple continents during specific historical periods, suggesting coordinated construction projects that may have been planned and executed by networks of ancient builders who shared common architectural traditions and worked according to unified temporal schedules that spanned global distances. The preservation of identical technical knowledge in geographically isolated locations indicates systematic methods for maintaining and transmitting complex information across vast distances and extended time periods, suggesting ancient educational systems and communication networks that maintain cultural continuity across oceanic barriers and generational transitions. As the shadows of ancient monuments continue to mark the passage of days and seasons across landscapes where they have stood for millennia, their global patterns of similarity whisper of human achievements that may have connected the entire ancient world through networks of knowledge, tradition, and cultural exchange that made the Olmecs not isolated pioneers of regional civilization, but participants in humanity's first global culture, whose influence shaped architectural development across all continents and established construction traditions that continue to influence human building practices thousands of years later. In the obsidian mirrors of Olmec ceremonial centers, where flickering torchlight created dancing reflections and shadow became substance, ancient priests gazed upward toward star-filled skies and recorded visitations that transformed their understanding of divine authority, cosmic order, and humanity's place within universal patterns that stretched far beyond earthly concerns. The gods who descended from celestial realms brought knowledge that enabled the construction of monuments, the development of astronomical sciences, and the establishment of spiritual traditions that would influence religious thought across continents and throughout millennia. The feathered serpent deity that dominates Olmec religious iconography represents more than mythological imagination. It embodies specific knowledge of aerodynamic principles, celestial mechanics, and technological capabilities that suggest direct observation of flying beings or vehicles whose characteristics were carefully recorded in artistic form and preserved through generations of religious tradition. The detailed anatomical accuracy of feathered serpent depictions, combined with their consistent association with descent from sky realms, implies artistic documentation of actual phenomena rather than pure symbolic representation. Dr. Zechariah Sitchin's controversial analysis of ancient Mesopotamian texts identified descriptions of sky gods who possessed flying vehicles, advanced technology, and genetic manipulation capabilities that correspond remarkably to characteristics attributed to Olmec deities in later Mesoamerican religious traditions. The technological capabilities, physical descriptions, and behavioral patterns documented in both cultural contexts display similarities that suggest either shared mythological origins or parallel documentation of actual phenomena. The sophisticated astronomical knowledge that appears suddenly in Olmec culture, without clear developmental antecedents, matches precisely the type of advanced cosmic understanding that ancient traditions attribute to divine teachers who descended from stellar realms to educate human civilizations. The mathematical precision of Olmec calendar calculations, the accuracy of their eclipse predictions, and their understanding of planetary cycles all demonstrate knowledge that would typically require centuries of systematic observation to develop independently. The genetic diversity documented in Olmec artistic representations, figures displaying African, Asian, European, and indigenous American characteristics, could reflect not simply human migration patterns, but genetic experimentation conducted by sky gods who created hybrid populations through technological intervention. The consistency of non-indigenous features in Olmec art, combined with the sophisticated understanding of biological principles evident in their transformation imagery, suggests knowledge of genetic manipulation that wouldn't be officially developed until modern biotechnology. The technological artifacts that appear sporadically in Olmec archaeological context, precision instruments, possible mechanical devices, and materials with no known natural sources match descriptions of divine tools and technologies that ancient traditions associate with sky god interventions. The magnetic compasses, the advanced metallurgy, and the sophisticated rubber processing all represent technological capabilities that seem to exceed the expected developmental limitations of ancient American civilization. Recent analysis of Olmec transformation imagery using computer enhancement techniques has revealed details that suggest the artists documented actual physical transformation processes rather than symbolic representations of spiritual concepts. The anatomical accuracy of intermediate stages between human and divine forms, the consistency of transformation sequences across multiple artistic works, and the technical precision of biological details all indicate documentation of observed phenomena rather than mythological imagination. The acoustic properties designed into Olmec ceremonial centers create sound effects that correspond to descriptions of divine manifestations in ancient religious texts from multiple cultures, resonant frequencies that induce altered consciousness, harmonic patterns that facilitate communication with non-human entities, and audio environments that enhance perception of otherworldly phenomena. These sophisticated acoustic engineering achievements suggest systematic knowledge of psychoacoustic principles that enable contact with non-human intelligences. The astronomical alignments built into Olmec monuments point not only toward predictable celestial phenomena visible from Earth, but also toward stellar regions that ancient traditions identify as the origins of sky gods who visited ancient civilizations. The precision of these alignments and their correspondence with mythological accounts of divine origins suggests intentional commemoration of actual astronomical events or locations associated with sky god visitations. The sudden abandonment of major Olmec ceremonial centers, followed by their deliberate burial under massive earthworks, mirrors patterns of site abandonment documented in ancient cultures worldwide following the departure of sky gods who had provided technological and cultural guidance. The careful preservation achieved through burial suggests reverence for sites where divine contact had occurred and anticipation of eventual return by sky beings who might require access to their former earthly installations. The genetic analysis of organic materials from Olmec sites has revealed DNA sequences that do not match known human haplogroups or correspond to any documented ancient population patterns. These anomalous genetic signatures suggest either contamination from unknown sources or the presence of non-human biological materials in contexts associated with religious activities and divine contact ceremonies. The mathematical constants embedded in Olmec architectural proportions include relationships that correspond to galactic measurements, stellar distances, and cosmic cycles that wouldn't be officially documented until modern astronomical research using advanced technological instruments. The precision of these cosmic calculations and their integration into architectural design suggests access to astronomical knowledge that exceeded the observational capabilities available to ancient Earth-based civilizations. The medicinal and consciousness-altering substances used in Olmec religious ceremonies include chemical compounds that produce psychological effects described in modern research as conducive to contact with non-human intelligences. The sophisticated pharmacological knowledge required to synthesize these compounds and the consistency of reported contact experiences suggests systematic use of chemical enhancement to facilitate communication with sky gods or other non-human entities. The preservation of sky god traditions in later Mesoamerican cultures, detailed accounts of flying deities' technological gifts from celestial teachers, and promises of eventual return by divine instructors suggests that Olmec religious experiences established contact protocols and spiritual expectations that influenced American religious thought for millennia and continue to shape indigenous spiritual traditions throughout the Americas. As night falls over the ancient ceremonial centers, where sky gods once descended to share their knowledge with human civilizations, the stars continue their eternal dance across tropical skies that witness divine visitations and technological interventions that may have established the foundations of human achievement and set the trajectory for cultural development that connected ancient America to cosmic forces whose influence shaped the entire course of human history. The gods from the sky left their knowledge encoded in stone monuments, preserved in astronomical alignments, and embedded in spiritual traditions that continue to whisper of contact between human civilization and cosmic intelligences whose technological capabilities and universal knowledge transformed ancient American culture and established patterns of divine human interaction that influenced religious development across the entire ancient world. In the deepest chambers of Olmec ceremonial centers, where humidity preserves organic materials and darkness protects ancient secrets from the destructive effects of tropical sunlight, evidence accumulates that suggests the rubber people weren't innovators creating new cultural traditions, but memory keepers, preserving the fragments of a much older, much more sophisticated global civilization whose technological achievements and cosmic knowledge had been scattered across the ancient world by cataclysmic events that destroyed urban centers, disrupted knowledge transmission, and forced the survivors of advanced cultures to rebuild human civilization from carefully preserved fragments. The sudden appearance of sophisticated Olmec culture in the archaeological record fully formed urban centers, complex astronomical knowledge, advanced technological capabilities, and artistic traditions without clear developmental antecedents corresponds precisely to patterns that would be expected if they represented survivors of an older civilization who retained access to knowledge systems developed by their predecessors and systematically worked to preserve and transmit that knowledge through generations of careful cultural stewardship. Dr. Robert Schoch's geological analysis of ancient monuments worldwide has documented evidence of catastrophic destruction dating to approximately 10,000 BCE, when massive geological events associated with the end of the last ice age destroyed coastal civilizations, altered river systems, and created environmental conditions that would have forced any surviving advanced cultures to abandon their traditional territories and establish new centers of cultural development in regions that offered suitable conditions for preserving their knowledge traditions. The sophisticated astronomical knowledge that characterizes Olmec culture displays characteristics that suggest inheritance from much older observational traditions that had tracked celestial phenomena for thousands of years before the Olmec period. The precision of their calendar calculations, the accuracy of their eclipse predictions, and their understanding of complex astronomical cycles all indicate access to accumulated observational data that would have required millennia of systematic skywatching to compile and verify. The technological capabilities evident throughout Olmec culture, precision stoneworking, advanced metallurgy, sophisticated urban planning, and chemical knowledge that enabled rubber vulcanization, represent isolated fragments of much more comprehensive technological systems that would have included numerous additional innovations, whose traces have been lost due to the perishable nature of most ancient materials and the destructive effects of tropical climate on organic preservation. The global distribution of cultural elements that derive from Olmec prototypes suggests they served as a central node for knowledge preservation and transmission, maintaining contact with survivor communities scattered across multiple continents and systematically sharing technological innovations, astronomical observations, and cultural traditions that enabled the rebuilding of human civilization in various geographical contexts, following the catastrophic events that destroyed earlier urban centers. The artistic traditions that dominate Olmec culture preserve imagery and symbolic systems that appear to commemorate much older cultural achievements. monumental construction projects that exceeded Olmec capabilities, technological devices whose functions aren't apparent in Olmec contexts, and cosmic knowledge that encompasses understanding of galactic processes and stellar phenomena beyond the observational capabilities of Earth-based ancient civilizations. The religious and mythological traditions that shaped Olmec spiritual practices preserve detailed accounts of earlier civilizations that possessed technological capabilities far exceeding those available during the Olmec period, flying vehicles that enabled global transportation, genetic manipulation techniques that created hybrid populations, and communication systems that maintained contact across oceanic distances through methods that aren't explained in surviving cultural traditions. The linguistic analysis of terms preserved in later Mesoamerican languages that derive from Olmec sources reveals vocabulary related to advanced technological concepts, sophisticated astronomical phenomena, and complex cultural practices that do and correspond to known Olmec capabilities, but suggest memory of earlier civilizations that possessed more advanced technological and cultural achievements than those documented in the archaeological record. The preservation techniques that the Olmecs used for maintaining cultural knowledge and coding information in durable stone monuments, integrating astronomical data with architectural design, and embedding technological knowledge within artistic traditions, correspond precisely to methods that would be optimal for transmitting complex information across extended time periods and through potential cultural disruptions that might threaten the continuity of knowledge preservation systems. Recent discoveries of underwater ruins off various coastlines around the world have revealed submerged architectural remains that display construction techniques, mathematical relationships, and astronomical alignments that correspond to Olmec innovations, suggesting that the technologies and cultural patterns documented in Olmec sites represent preservation of knowledge originally developed by coastal civilizations that were submerged by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. The sophisticated understanding of global geography evident in Olmec navigational knowledge suggests inheritance of cartographic traditions that had mapped oceanic routes, documented continental configurations, and established systematic methods for long-distance navigation that would have required centuries or millennia of systematic exploration and geographical documentation to develop through independent observation and experimentation. The genetic diversity documented in Olmec artistic representations may reflect not contemporary population mixing, but artistic preservation of memory regarding the ethnic characteristics of earlier global civilizations that included populations from multiple continental sources before catastrophic events disrupted global communication networks and forced human populations into geographical isolation that created the continental separation patterns documented in later historical periods. The integration of advanced astronomical knowledge with practical technological applications evident throughout Olmec culture suggests systematic preservation of scientific traditions that originally encompassed much more comprehensive understanding of natural phenomena than what survived in Olmec contexts, with the preserved fragments representing only a small portion of much more extensive knowledge systems that had been partially lost during the cultural transitions that preceded Olmec civilization. The ceremonial importance that the Olmecs attributed to knowledge preservation activities, the elaborate rituals surrounding astronomical observations, the reverent treatment of technological artifacts, and the systematic documentation of cultural information in permanent forms corresponds to behavioral patterns that would be expected among people who understood themselves as responsible for maintaining crucial knowledge that might otherwise be lost, and whose preservation was essential for the eventual restoration of advanced human civilization. As the jungle reclaims the ceremonial centers where Olmec knowledge keepers once maintained their vigil over accumulated wisdom, the monuments they created continue to preserve fragments of understanding that may trace back through thousands of years of cultural transmission to the original sources of human technological achievement and cosmic knowledge, waiting for future generations who might possess the insight necessary to decode their messages and restore the advanced understanding that once enabled human civilization to achieve levels of technological sophistication and global coordination that mainstream archaeology dismisses as impossible for ancient peoples. Standing at the edge of the known world, where archaeological evidence meets speculative possibility and conventional history encounters the mysteries that refuse to fit within established frameworks, we confront the profound implications of what the Olmecs story might actually represent. If these remarkable people were indeed the inheritors, preservers, or even the remnants of humanity's first global civilization, then every assumption about human development, cultural evolution, and the timeline of technological achievement requires fundamental reconsideration that would revolutionize our understanding of who we are and where we came from. The evidence accumulates like stars emerging in the deepening twilight. Each individual point of light might be explained away, dismissed as coincidence or misinterpretation, but the overall pattern creates a constellation of possibility that illuminates landscapes of human achievement, extending far beyond the comfortable boundaries of accepted historical narrative. The colossal heads with their enigmatic features, the sophisticated astronomical alignments, the technological innovations that preceded similar achievements by centuries, and the global patterns of influence all point toward a story that mainstream archaeology approaches with reluctance, as if acknowledging these implications would require abandoning the entire conceptual framework within which modern scholarship operates. Yet the implications, once acknowledged, transform everything. If the Olmecs represented not the beginning of American civilization, but its most recent flowering, if their innovations preserved rather than pioneered the technologies that shaped ancient achievement, if their global connections reflected ancient networks rather than impossible coincidences, then human history becomes not a story of gradual progress from primitive origins toward modern sophistication, but a narrative of lost golden ages, catastrophic disruptions, and heroic preservation efforts that maintained fragments of advanced knowledge through dark periods of cultural collapse. Dr. Graham Hancock's research into ancient civilizations worldwide has documented patterns of sudden cultural emergence, sophisticated astronomical knowledge, and technological capabilities that suggest human achievement reached remarkable heights during periods that conventional archaeology dismisses as primitive. The Olmecs, in this broader context, represent not an anomaly requiring explanation, but a perfect example of ancient sophistication that challenges fundamental assumptions about the trajectory of human development. The technological implications extend beyond academic discussion into realms of practical significance. If ancient peoples possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, engineering, metallurgy, and chemistry, then modern technology might represent rediscovery rather than innovation, and ancient texts, monuments, and artifacts might contain practical information that could accelerate contemporary scientific development. The rubber vulcanization techniques perfected by the Olmecs, the precision stoneworking methods they employed, and the astronomical calculations they preserved all demonstrate capabilities that modern science is still working to understand fully. The cultural implications prove even more profound. If global communication networks connected ancient civilizations across oceanic distances, if knowledge systems encompassed worldwide coordination of astronomical observations and technological development, if human societies achieved levels of cooperation and cultural integration that exceeded anything documented in recorded history, then our current assumptions about human nature, social organization, and the possibilities for global coordination require complete re-examination. The spiritual implications may prove most transformative of all. If ancient peoples maintained contact with cosmic intelligences, if their religious traditions preserved accurate accounts of divine interventions that provided technological knowledge and cultural guidance, if the boundaries between earthly and celestial realms were more permeable in ancient times than modern skepticism allows, then the materialistic worldview that dominates contemporary thought represents not scientific sophistication, but cultural Amnesia that has disconnected humanity from cosmic awareness that once guided human development. The geographical implications challenge modern understanding of ancient capabilities and global awareness. If transoceanic travel was routine rather than impossible, if ancient maps documented continental configurations with accuracy that modern cartography has only recently matched, if trade networks encompassed global distribution of goods and knowledge, then the oceans were highways rather than barriers, and ancient peoples possessed geographical knowledge that encompassed planetary awareness of remarkable sophistication. The temporal implications prove equally revolutionary. If advanced civilizations flourished thousands of years earlier than conventional archaeology admits, if cultural knowledge was transmitted across millennia through sophisticated preservation systems, if human achievement followed cycles of advancement and decline that extended across geological timescales, then recorded history represents only the most recent chapter in a much longer story of human development that includes golden ages whose achievements exceeded anything documented in historical sources. The human implications transcend academic speculation and touch the fundamental questions of identity and potential that shape individual and collective self-understanding. If our ancestors achieved remarkable technological and cultural sophistication, if ancient knowledge systems encompassed understanding of natural phenomena that modern science is still discovering, if human potential includes capabilities that contemporary culture doesn't acknowledge or develop, then current limitations on human achievement may reflect cultural conditioning rather than biological or technological constraints. The future implications suggest possibilities that transform pessimistic predictions about human survival and development. If ancient civilizations successfully managed global coordination, environmental challenges, and technological integration, if their knowledge systems provided sustainable approaches to cultural development and natural resource management, if their achievements demonstrated human capabilities for cooperation and innovation that exceed current cultural patterns, then their examples might guide contemporary efforts to address global challenges and develop sustainable approaches to planetary stewardship. As the sun sets behind the last horizon of conventional historical narrative, the shadows of Olmec monuments stretch across landscapes of possibility that encompass revolutionary understanding of human achievement, cosmic awareness, and planetary heritage. The rubber people whisper their secrets to anyone willing to listen with minds open to implications that would transform human self-understanding and reveal capabilities that mainstream culture has forgotten, but ancient wisdom preserved, in stone monuments that continue to mark the boundaries between known and unknown, accepted and possible, historical and legendary. The last horizon beckons toward territories of human potential that the Olmecs may have explored and mapped, leaving us monuments that serve as lighthouses, guiding toward shores of achievement that conventional navigation declares unreachable, but ancient precedent suggests remain accessible to those willing to sail beyond the comfortable boundaries of accepted possibility. In the gathering dusk of another tropical evening, as shadows lengthen across the jungle floor and the ancient ceremonial centers settle into the profound silence that follows each sunset, the colossal heads maintain their eternal vigil over secrets that may never yield to conventional investigation. Their carved features weathered by countless seasons, yet still commanding in their monumental presence, continue to gaze across horizons that stretch far beyond the visible landscape toward distances of time and space that encompass mysteries too vast for comfortable comprehension. The stone remembers what human memory has forgotten. In the basalt quarried from distant mountains, shaped by artists whose techniques remain incomprehensible, and positioned according to astronomical principles that required mathematical sophistication exceeding expected ancient capabilities, the Olmec monuments preserve fragments of knowledge that whisper of achievements lost to time, connections severed by catastrophe, and understanding that once encompassed global awareness of remarkable sophistication. Each monument stands as a testament to human potential that transcends the limitations imposed by conventional historical narrative. The precision of their carving, demonstrates technological capabilities that challenge assumptions about ancient toolkits. The accuracy of their astronomical alignments reveals knowledge of celestial mechanics that suggests systematic observation spanning centuries or inheritance of complete astronomical traditions developed by predecessor civilizations. The global distribution of their stylistic influences implies networks of cultural communication that connected continents and transmitted knowledge across oceanic distances. Dr. Michael Coe once observed that the Olmecs seem to have appeared out of nowhere, their sophisticated culture materializing in the archaeological record without clear antecedents, as if they inherited, rather than developed the technologies and knowledge systems that enabled their remarkable achievements. This pattern suggests not gradual cultural evolution, but preservation and transmission of advanced understanding that originated in sources whose traces have been obscured by time, climate, and the selective preservation that characterizes tropical archaeological contexts. The mystery deepens with each new discovery. Ground-penetrating radar reveals buried structures of unprecedented complexity beneath jungle growth that has concealed them for centuries. Chemical analysis of artifacts identifies materials that have no known local sources and suggests trade networks or technological capabilities that exceeded supposed limitations of ancient American development. Astronomical alignments point towards stellar phenomena that would not be visible from Mesoamerican latitudes, but correspond to observations that could be made from other continental positions. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery lies not in what the Olmecs achieved, but in what their achievements represent about human potential itself. If ancient peoples could develop rubber vulcanization techniques that wouldn't be rediscovered until the industrial era, if they could transport 40-ton monuments across difficult terrain using technologies that remain unexplained, if they could encode astronomical calculations of remarkable precision into architectural alignments that continue to track celestial phenomena with mathematical accuracy, then human capabilities encompass possibilities that contemporary culture neither acknowledges nor develops. The implications extend beyond archaeological curiosity into realms of practical significance for contemporary challenges. The sustainable urban planning evident in Olmec cities, the sophisticated water management systems that functioned efficiently for centuries, the integration of astronomical knowledge with agricultural timing that optimized food production, all demonstrate approaches to environmental management and social organization that might guide modern efforts to develop sustainable relationships between human culture and natural systems. The cultural preservation techniques that enabled Olmec knowledge to influence subsequent civilizations for millennia offer models for maintaining crucial information across generational transitions and cultural disruptions. Their methods for encoding complex data in durable materials, integrating practical knowledge with artistic expression, and creating educational systems that transmitted specialized understanding across centuries all suggest approaches to knowledge preservation that might prove valuable for contemporary efforts to maintain cultural continuity through periods of rapid change. The spiritual dimensions of Olmec achievement, their understanding of consciousness transformation, their integration of astronomical observation with religious practice, their apparent contact with cosmic intelligences that provided technological and cultural guidance suggest aspects of human potential that materialistic worldviews dismiss, but that might prove essential for developing the expanded awareness necessary to address global challenges that require planetary perspective and cosmic understanding. As the stars emerge in the tropical sky above the ancient ceremonial centers, the same constellations that guided Olmec astronomers continue their eternal dance across celestial realms that encompass distances and time scales that dwarf human concerns yet somehow remain connected to earthly affairs through principles that Olmec knowledge keepers understood and preserved in monuments that continue to track celestial phenomena with precision that rivals modern observational instruments. The jungle whispers its ancient secrets to those who listen with patience and respect. The howler monkeys that announce each dawn and dusk maintain vocal traditions that may echo across millennia of continuous inhabitation. The rubber trees continue to produce latex that local peoples process using techniques that trace back to Olmec innovations. The rivers follow courses established by ancient engineering projects that modified natural flow patterns according to principles that optimize transportation, agriculture, and urban development. But the stone heads remain the most eloquent witnesses to Olmec achievement and mystery. Their features, neither fully indigenous nor entirely foreign, suggest genetic diversity that encompassed global populations. Their expressions, both human and transcendent, imply consciousness that bridged earthly and cosmic awareness. Their positioning, astronomically precise yet spiritually meaningful, demonstrates integration of scientific knowledge with religious understanding that created comprehensive worldviews encompassing both practical and metaphysical dimensions of human experience. In the end, the Olmecs may represent not ancient history, but living possibility, demonstration that human potential encompasses capabilities that contemporary culture has forgotten, but that remain accessible to those willing to expand their awareness beyond the comfortable limitations of accepted possibility. Their monuments continue to mark the boundaries between known and unknown, challenging each generation to choose between the safety of conventional understanding and the adventure of exploration that might reveal capabilities and connections that transform human self-awareness and planetary relationship. The echoes of stone will continue to resonate across centuries and millennia, carrying their whispers of time across distances that encompass both memory and prophecy. The colossal heads maintain their vigil, waiting with geological patience for the emergence of human consciousness, sophisticated enough to decode their messages and restore the advanced understanding that once enabled our species to achieve levels of technological sophistication, global coordination, and cosmic awareness that made the ancient world a place of wonder that we are still learning to appreciate and perhaps, eventually, to emulate. If you've journeyed this far through landscapes of mystery and possibility, through jungles where ancient achievements await rediscovery and horizons where human potential stretches toward cosmic awareness, consider exploring further territories where conventional boundaries dissolve and ancient wisdom whispers its secrets to those brave enough to listen. The adventure continues wherever curiosity leads and wonder guides the exploration of human heritage that encompasses achievements far greater than mainstream narrative acknowledges and possibilities far more remarkable than contemporary imagination dares to envision.